everyone, and welcome back to the Project Manga Podcast, where we cover One Piece, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, Ayashimon, Sakamoto Days, and Mission Yozakura Family, week to week. Back this week to discuss Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 19. I'm Nox.
And I'm Mellow Yenis.
No Eagle this week. Me and Eagle got sick as hell a couple of days ago, and it really threw off the recording for this review. But I'm feeling better now. There's at least two of us. Mello's here. We can do the show. So sorry for the wait, but we're getting after it. Before we get into the conversation, of course, we'd like you to take a look in the description down below. That's going to be where you can follow us on all of our individual social media accounts like Twitter. You can join our online communities like Discord, listen to the Project Manga Podcast wherever you normally listen to your podcasts. And there's also ways to support what we do here by checking out our online store or our Patreon. Also, please slap a like on the video and consider subscribing if you are enjoying the content over here at Project Manga so far. We upload weekly, and we would greatly appreciate it. But with all that said, let's finally get into this weekly Shonen Jump review, starting with Ayashimon, chapter 19, Until Your Chestnuts Are Out of the Fire. Bye-bye. How do we feel, man?
This is necessary, right? Like,
yeah.
we're already talking about, like, hey, because we talked about during the fight with Koton, we were talking about how Maruo really needs to, like, think outside of himself. Because we were talking, it's like, is he real? He's not much of a hero. He wants to be a hero. He professes he wants to be a hero, but we were like, okay, how is he going to be? How is he being heroic, right? As opposed to just a smoke monster, right?
Right.
How is he being a hero? And this chapter finally gave us that.
Yes.
Where it's like, hey, without, like, reward to myself, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to help someone that is literally helpless.
Right. This isn't a, big bad in my way that wants to fight me. This isn't anyone that pissed off, somebody on my team and I have to get, revenge on them or anything. It's not the usual obstacle that Maruo, normally finds himself in front of. This is a very, completely separated, someone needs my help. I have the facilities to help them and I'm going to do that. I mean, also it helps that it, goes hand in hand with the training that he was kind of doing the entire chapter.
Oh, absolutely.
But more to your point that this is an act of heroism that isn't tied to anything selfish or immediately related to gang activity inside of the Yakuza. So.
Absolutely. No, I really liked that. I also enjoyed, like, the training aspect and, like, the weird old man Ozunu.
Yeah, dude.
He's fucking weird.
Yeah,
and,
very
like,
weird and quirky, but very cool in the kind of, like, older, experienced teacher kind of way.
Yeah, so no Ozunu is actually, like, absolutely ancient. He's an ancient Japanese guy. He basically went under, like, Enno Ozunu or Enno Gyoja. Basically in the Kamakura period, like, he was, like, this mountain hermit, ascended to, like, mountain sainthood, started, like, the Shugendo style of Buddhism, which focused on, like, shamanism and spirituality. The dude got, like, exiled in, like, 699 AD.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Exiled to an island in Japan, like one of those tiny ass islands, because the court nobles were afraid of him. Because he was said to be able to control demons, to bind spirits to his will, to make them light his fires and chop and carry his wood and water.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and then after he gets imprisoned, they still, like, consult his, like, apprentices for, like, herbal knowledge to, like, maintain the health of the monarchies and stuff. And I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, like, hey, you broke a bunch of laws, we're gonna lock you up, but you gotta know what you were doing out here. I don't know
if he broke laws at that point. They're just like, you're suspicious and we don't like you. And
oh,
you're
sure.
basically like a Japanese Rasputin, except for we're not fucking you, so get out of here.
Just back in the day shit. It's like, you look kind of sus. Throw him in prison. Let's talk to him about it. I mean,
if he looked like the Ayashimon Ozuna, of course he looked sus.
Yeah,
look at that
sure.
googly.
Yeah, very ugly. But, he has a lot of charm to him, too, just, like, as that, like, you know, speaks in riddles, kind of Master Roshi Yoda, you know, like
Very cryptic.
Hindu Master Roshi Yoda type cat, you know what I mean? Like, I love it. I love everything that's going on in Ayashimon right now. I feel like Ayashimon, like, since we've been following it from the very beginning, you know what I mean? You obviously go through and you see, you know, if it has what it takes to survive in the magazine and what it's doing well, what it's not doing well, what could potentially get it axed, etc., etc. And for me personally, like, Ayashimon not only had like an amazing first chapter for me, and the follow-up chapters after that were really good too, but like, even when I start to feel like it's missing something that I feel like it absolutely needs, it isn't that long before Ayashimon gives me that, like, right on time. You know what I mean? Like, we've been talking about it throughout our coverage, and me specifically talking about how, like, hey, you're a big punching machine main character. Now you've run into an obstacle that you can't punch through, and you lost to it, you know, in the form of Dopo. That was right on time for me. You know what I mean? It's like you introduced an obstacle or a wall that Maruo couldn't use his regular strategy to get through. And it was very early in the series when that happened to him. So I was really happy about that. And then to immediately follow that up with Katone in the way that it did, another enemy that his current fighting style wasn't very good against. You know what I mean? And he had
needed
to
layers.
he needed to adapt his mentality and his fighting style on the fly to get through that fight. That was another thing that I felt like was necessary inside of Ayashimon. It's not just enough to lose, you know, when you are this like very strong, oppressive, punching machine main character, you know, in the same vein as like a Mashle or in the same vein as like a Saitama. It's not enough to just lose. What do you do after the loss? Do you just get stronger and punch harder the next time? Like, no, you actually needed to upgrade your outlook on combat in general, as well as develop a new, deeper strategic layer to your fighting style. So I was like, that was right on time too. And then to immediately go from that into, you know, the Kyo kind of like backstory with his relationship with Kyo, which I felt like was right on time. I was asking myself, like, when are we going to actually see Kyo and see like what he was about? Ended up being an amazing character. Loved that chapter. And I was like, hell yeah, that's what I needed. And then to go from that immediately into power system exposition, it's like Ayashimon is firing on like all cylinders for me. And it has been the entire time. Yeah.
Yuji Kaku, they know exactly what they're doing. Like, like we were talking, like you just said, it's like, you know, every time we're just like, hey, when is this gonna happen?
It does.
Yuji Kaku's like, I did that on purpose,
so
that you would want it. Now I'm giving it to you, and it feels good, don't it? Like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, he's like, I got you. Don't even worry about it.
Like, I feel like, and it's like, we're only not even 20 chapters in, and people were like, oh, it's gonna get axed, it's gonna get axed, and it's like, come on. Phantom Seer got like, what, 30?
I don't remember how far Phantom Seer went,
but like most series will at least like get to like 30 chapters before they even like come close to getting in trouble.
Oh no, chapters get axed in the, or I mean, manga gets axed in the teens. I want to say like pretty often. Yeah, like you have. I don't remember how far Phantom Seer got, but you had like, you know, Samurai 8, which was Kishimoto's book, and then that got to like 41 or 42 chapters before they axed it. Probably because it's, you know, Kishimoto, you know what I mean? And that's like one of the bigger ones that got axed in like recent memory for us, especially because we used to like cover it or whatever. But like by and large, I want to say you could see an axe as early as chapter like 13 or 14. I think Candy Flurry only got to like 17. Neru was less than 20, I want to say, you know what I mean?
Neru
so
was like 14, 16.
Yeah, you know, so it can come, you know, like really quick. And Ayashimon has survived, you know, axe round after axe round, despite like Japan not really liking, you know, the tattoo chapter in regard to like how, you know, closely it tied into, you know, Yakuza stuff, you know, for them over there. They really didn't fuck with that. And that makes all the sense in the world. But like outside of that, I don't think that there's like really anything that Ayashimon, you know, is doing wrong for me at this point. You know what I mean? So I'm very happy with where it's at. I'm happy that it's surviving these axe rounds. I think Yuji Kaku has a great story on his hands here, and he's got a lot to show inside of it, and he has a really good plan for it. The pacing is another thing that I love inside of Ayashimon. I think it's paced brilliantly. I think that the delivery of information is never too much or too little at once. Every scene, serves multiple purposes, either for the characters inside of the scene or the overarching narrative. So that pacing feels really good because there's no redundancy in anything that's happening. I mean, outside of Maruo punching, characters a lot in the beginning, but we already talked about how he ran into, a hurdle really quickly in that regard. So like pacing wise, everything feels really good inside of Ayashimon too, and I hope it lasts as long as it should.
I really hope so, because like I understand like the hesitation to kind of glorify the idea of the Yakuza, but at the same time, I feel like that's not what Yuji Kaku is going for as like a overall theme. I think he's going to reach out and like, hey, these are the reasons people came to crime, right? Like the Yashimon, the yokai, they're going there because they need money.
Right.
They, like us, are trapped in like this capitalistic funnel of their funneling their existence through the lens of like capitalistic ventures.
Yeah.
And so like it makes sense that they turn to crime, because how are they gonna get money as a day laborer?
Right.
As a person that works a convenience store or waits tables in a restaurant or does the generic, running services in the world.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Like, like that's why they turn to crime. It makes sense. And I feel like as we progress through the series, Yuji Kaku is going to kind of like point out the flaws in the system, point out the flaws in the society, and like explore a little more of that, like why they turn to the careers that they do.
Yeah.
And kind of condemn the situation, condemn the people that like, oh, I've bought into the idea that I'm a gangster and that I should be fearful. And they're like, you know what? You're just afraid.
Right.
And you're projecting. Like,
yeah. And when you look through it, when you look at a series, through the lens of like kind of like what you're talking about right now, trying to break down the reasons behind why things are happening the way that they are, instead of automatically looking at it as you're covering the subject matter, you have to be glorifying it. That's obviously not how we want to be thinking about it. There's obviously a deeper message, especially with a writer like Yuji Kaku, who's known for like deep poetic, symbolism and other kinds of analogs and whatnot, like we've kind of been talking about in this segment already. Like what matters is, relatability, and whether or not a situation is glorified or whether or not it's something that you want to look up to or aspire to be. That's definitely not what I get from Ayashimon inside of this Yakuza story. What I see is more along the lines of what you're talking about, inside of why are these characters doing this? They really don't have a choice, and we're looking at what it looks like from a bird's eye view at a situation where people are forced into this kind of situation, and the kind of people that can be nurtured from this kind of situation. So you can tie it back to like the hierarchy of needs too, as to why it is relatable despite being such a despicable profession. You know what I mean? Because you can tell that these people are missing something in their road to self-actualization. So you want that, whether or not you're familiar with the hierarchy of needs, or whether or not you are actually looking at it through that lens from person to person who's reading it, at the end of the day, that relatability factor is there in the background, whether you're conscious of it or not, and that evokes certain emotions from the reader. You know what I mean? Yes. So like, that's what matters to me.
And I think that you said it really well. They're missing something on the road to self-actualization. I think that's going to be a strong, ongoing theme into the series, especially with what they did with the power system.
Yes.
Because they're talking about like, how their like prana chakras are like going to be like the 7, chakra points of the body. So like the crown, the third eye, there's going to be the throat chakra, the heart chakra. There's going to be like the solar plexus pancreatic chakra. There's going to be like the splenic, like ovaries, testes, kind of excretory chakras, and then like below that, like around the taint or something like that, is going to be the root chakra, which is going to be like the grounding chakra. Those are the 7 chakras, and this comes and like the discussion of like the Sathula Sarira being like the gross material body, and the Suksma Sarira, which is going to be like the astral body, which is composed of like emotions and thoughts, and without it the human body dies and withers. They taught that comes from the 3 bodies in Hinduism.
Ooh.
And they believe that the Suksma Sarira is this astral self. It leaves behind, like, it leaves the body and is pulled through the thing. And then they were talking about, like, the Atman. Right?
Yeah.
The Atman is basically Sanskrit. It translates to breath or soul. It is considered the idea of, like, the eternal core of one's personality that reincarnates when one dies. It remains it's like when one dies, it remains, the body like fades away, and it's the part that moves forward and reincarnates, especially when we were talking about how the Ayashimon incarnate. So having a power system that focuses on something that is heavily tied to reincarnation, self-actualization, enlightenment, like, is going to be a huge part of this story.
Yes.
Because, like, Urara's gone through the growth of, I was angry for feeling abandoned and I wanted to lash out at the world, and she's already grown through that. She's going to find happiness. Probably not happiness in the form of, like, I'm going to rule Kabuki-cho. It's going to be like, I'm going to find happiness and let go of, like, the earthly desires that I once had.
Yeah. Get closure from my pops, figure out what's good with this Yakuza
Mm-hmm.
situation in all the ways that I need to, and just come into my own full potential as the character I'm going to make myself given my situation and my upbringing.
And I think it'd be really interesting if she's like, I don't want to deal with that. And so she's like, I'm not going to be in charge of it. And I feel like she's going to, like, defer control or, like, the basic runnings of a thing to someone like Ten, which I think would be hilarious in a very poetic way.
Oh, shit.
Because,
was
like,
not
10...
expecting to hear 10. I almost choked on my water.
No, because, like, 10 is a responsible, hardworking kid who only came to the city so that he'd have enough money to fuel his existence. You know? Whereas, like, Urara's, like, you know, she was basically a trust fund kid that, like, wanted revenge on the world a little bit.
Right.
And I was thinking that, like, I'm losing the tangent, but like going back to self-actualization, Maruo's improving himself by having his chakras realigned and having like all the like nadi, prana pathways. The nadi are basically all like the little tendrils, and it's basically the nervous system. It connects all the various chakras and like has roots all through the body to like deliver all that energy that's been filtered through those chakra points. According to like some of the research I was looking into, like Hinduism and stuff, there are about 72,000 to 350,000 nadi within the human body.
Oh man!
So it's basically just nerves.
It's
basically just nerves.
Yeah, I'm starting to see like the vision on like an anatomical level a little bit more now that we're having this conversation, because obviously like when I read the chapter, you know, they put it in the analog of like a water tank system. You have this huge reserve of energy is the water. It filters through, you know, these pipes that are the nadi, I'm assuming, you know, on the way to the faucet, which is how you know, manifest and channel that energy outwardly, in Maruo's case, through his fists and through his punches. So like all that felt really good to me. But like now that we're actually like getting, you know, like a research kind of like breakdown to a certain extent, I'm starting to see the vision on a little bit deeper level. And that just obviously makes it feel a lot better too when you have it from a couple different angles.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, because I feel like there is like, what's the phrase? Like wholeness. And I feel like Maruo is going to have kind of like, it's like a form of like physical enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
Because the idea that like one transcends the like body and mind or something like that, like your mind worries about things and your body suffers things and you transcend those problems, but is it just like a leaving behind your problems, or is it you hone your body so it doesn't suffer and you ease your mind so it doesn't worry, right? It's like, isn't it more of just a strengthening of all those things to have like a form of a literal fusion of body and mind where there aren't any problems? And that could be enlightenment.
Yes.
Like Maruo is deeply negatively wounded in his mind, and he's getting his body there. You know, he's already got the body. he's, you know, I feel like he's getting there. I feel like it's enlightenment for him is going to be more visceral than like what we see in like kind of like dry, like yogi style books.
Yogi, yeah. Oh yeah, man. On page 7, I really like this this part with Urara breaking down this like kind of like drawing of this human interacting with an Ayashimon. She's like, the physical human world and the immaterial yokai world don't really touch. They only interact through the medium of cash. In order to touch a yokai, in essence a concept, one needs to reach the immaterial, so you started by dulling his senses attached to the physical world, sight, smell, and so on. This was really cool to me because, like, I'm, you know, really into philosophy. I'm a really big fan of Rene Descartes, and this, like, looks a lot like mind-body dualism, you know, to a certain degree to me, which is, like, a really interesting subject for me, because you have this human in the diagram that's punching the cash representative of this yokai's consciousness. Right, is what we're like seeing here in this diagram. That's why you have, you know, the guy punching, you have the yokai made of cash, and then you have the very, you know, similar looking actual yokai presence behind it. And when you look at it through like, I don't know, like the Watchmen lens, like this is basically like how Dr. Manhattan operates after he went through the intrinsic field subtractor and got his entire physical being deleted, yet his consciousness remained to put the pieces back together in the form of Dr. Manhattan. You know what I mean? So it's like a, you know, it's basically saying mind-body dualism exists in this universe, and it's also kind of saying that in this supernatural way attached to yokai inside of, you know, Ayashimon, because it's like the real yokai is in a different plane of existence that we can't interact with. Its cash representative is how it has a three-dimensional experience on the same plane as us, but it's effectively just something for you to look at and talk to and touch. But the real yokai, like, isn't even there. You know what I mean? Like, for real. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I love the supernatural aspect of it, and it reminds me of, like, the idea of, like, the shadow and body reversed.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for us, we are creatures of the material world, so our core is there, and our spirit is our shadow, whereas yokai are spirits, so their true form is the shadow, and their projection is just the physical form.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that.
It was so good, man. And I love dialogue like this. I love exposition like this, and I love fucking diagrams. Like, I love the chibi, you know, didactic diagrams that like, you know, artists will give us in manga, you know what I mean? Because it just makes learning what they're talking about that much more fun when you present it in such a fun, you know, kiddish kind of diagram to like directly contrast, you know, whatever else is happening. Like when you get it in like Hunter x Hunter, as like heads are being like broken and bodies are being cut in half, you'll go into like, you know, a page turn of like a narrator breakdown of like how the ability is working that's causing this massacre in the background, and it's like illustrated with really cute like chibi like characters in the diagram. Like I've always loved that contrast in manga, and it's like one of my favorite things about it. So when I turned this page onto this, you know, mind-body dualism situation here, I was like, oh yeah,
hell yeah,
this is everything I love about manga almost. Like, fuck yeah. But
I really enjoyed the training montages.
Yeah.
Like on 8-9, I loved it. And I love how the Todoroki Alliance are like involved 100% of the way. They're just like, yeah, you're our boy, Blue. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I love the fact that they're forcing him to jog. Like, he's getting faster and stuff too, because like at the first page of 8, he's you know, they're dragging him, and by the next page he's just keeping up with them.
Yep.
And I'm just like, oh, he's getting faster, hell yeah. They're making him work out by pushing a semi-truck with all of them on it. And I like the little the bathhouse scene, because like that is probably like a key moment of like relaxation for like most like mobster movies.
Yeah. And
I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
I love those old time bathhouses. Like,
Yes,
they'll boil your skin off, and it's you feel amazing after that. Like, all the old heads are just like, yes, these bones were meant to stew.
Yeah.
It's man.
Yeah, for sure.
Public bathhouses, man.
Public
they're
bathhouses. I haven't visited one ever in my life. I don't know if I'll ever have an opportunity for something like that, but
fair.
I definitely get the appeal.
It's great. I've been to like a few when I used to live in China, so I was just like,
Nice. Hell yeah.
Um,
Page 12. I love page 12 too. And when I'm frustrated, I bury myself in manga to escape. That habit hasn't changed at all. And then Buddy says, reading manga to recover. That boy is touching your Suksuma Sarira. Reading manga brings healing to your Atman and Suksuma Sarira. Their healing affects your body's healing. This is a really cool like explanation for this because like on the surface you want to go he reads manga and heals. That doesn't really make sense. But when you tie it back to this, you know, Buddhist or Hindu, I can't remember if it's Hindu. Is it Hindu?
It's Hindu.
Yeah, it's Hindu. Yeah,
the three bodies are the Hindu thing.
Yeah. I don't know why, like that's just like such a dumb like mistake to make, but for some reason I just like flip those in my mind sometimes. So I just wanted to.
It's all good.
Yeah. But anyway, he says, you know, all of these things, and like from a surface level, you're like that sounds kind of awkward. But then when you view it through the lens of this Hindu power system and how it's all about, you know, mental health first, and then that will permeate, you know, into the physical. You know, in certain ways, it's like that's cool in a fantasy series where I'm already suspending disbelief. Like that's a good enough explanation, and it's cool that it ties back to such a core personality trait of Maruo, and it only works because it is such a core personality trait of Maruo. It's like his jinky. Reading manga is like his jinky and like Gachiakuda.
Or Gachiakuda.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like this is the one thing you care the most about, so immersing yourself in this one thing creates your perfect safe place. When you're in your perfect safe place, your mental is, you know, at its best being restored. And once your mental is restored, that will trickle down, you know, into your body, because this is a mind-body relationship that is being focused on here. What is the relationship to the mind and body? So your body healing through, you know, immersing yourself in the thing that you love the most makes a lot of sense for a healing practice in this power system.
Yeah, I actually totally like. I think it was pretty easy for me to accept all of that stuff. It made sense to me. My mod is big into like spirituality and like a balanced spirit and balanced mind helps lead to like fixing the problems that your body will manifest. You know, like how you're like if you're nervous about something, your stomach will twist itself and give yourself a stomach ache, right? Like the body responds to stress and like imbalances in your mental and like how you feel into physical stuff. And like you
want to know what I have heard about this, because people are talking about like how you can die of like a broken heart and shit, you know what I mean? Your heart hasn't.
My grandparents did that. So like my grandfather did not last very long after my grandmother like passed. My Nai on my dad's side, and like after she passed, he didn't last very long afterwards. And like one of my friends was just telling me, I was like, yeah, no, you know, his mom had passed, and then a year to the day his dad passed, and it was just like people die of broken hearts all the time. And like also if like there's people that like shouldn't like a doctor tells them it's like you got cancer, you got like a year to live, and they're just like, no, fuck you, I refuse to accept that, I'm going to live. And they maintain a very strong mentality, and mentality does bear a huge part in healing one's own body. It's like physical therapy. If you give up in physical therapy, if you allow yourself to succumb to despair, you never get to that point of healing. Or people's cancer can get worse due to someone's like negative, you know,
outlook on the situation.
Like, if they give up, then you know the body loses its will to keep fighting for it.
So I guess it's not as much of a suspension of disbelief because this is actually rooted in like
it's
very
just
real
something
world things. I was just thinking about like, you know, I was just
yeah.
thinking about how like Luffy takes a bunch of damage and he's down for the count, no more fighting, and then eats a fucking drumstick. And he's like, aha, like Popeye ate his spinach, and it's like, okay. Like that works, you know, for One Piece. It's comedy. It's like silly, you know, to a certain extent. You can suspend, you know, disbelief for that healing system in like One Piece, and that's like fine. And I was trying to like kind of like tie it back to here about how like you're still suspending disbelief, but there's more of an explanation for it than something like that over in One Piece. But no, this is a very real world thing actually at the end of the day. I see where you're coming from. So there's not a whole lot of suspension.
It seemed normal because I was like, you know what, I've seen it before. Like one of my buddies had cancer, totally beat it, and like they were just like, you kind of caught it late. Like we'll see how you do. And he's like, whatever. And then he literally won the lottery. He literally won the lottery, broke even from like all his medical treatments, and he's like, well, I'm back where I started. And he's like, well, that's life, and it just kept going. And I'm like, you fucking optimistic piece of shit, I love you.
Yes. But that's just so cool that that's where we're at in like Ayashimon right now. You know what I mean? It's just like we had so many ideas about how this story could progress and all the different like routes and avenues that we could take. We might not be able to guess like every, you know, major narrative plot point, you know, or whatever. I hope not anyway. You know what I mean? Right. But when it comes to what we think is good storytelling structure, Ayashimon has, at least for us, been delivering on all of the things that we think it needs right on time. You know what I mean? So I'm very happy with where Ayashimon is at right now for that.
The part that I kind of got a big kick out of it was page 17, where just like, so you say the young man who saved your son emerged unscathed and then ran away? Yes, he was so nondescript. I can't remember his face.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too, and I saw that line. I was like, damn, is Maruo really just like a regular, like looking person? Is that what he's supposed to be? Because I just like immediately attached myself to his design, and it's like burnt into my head, and I think he has a very recognizable, you know, and charming design, like personally, but like in this world that he occupies, he probably does just look like a regular person.
He just looks like a kid with band-aids on his face. And that's about it. Just like, which kind of tracks where he's just like, everyone underestimates him. He just looks kind of plain. Like he's trying to be flashy with like the, you know, the Hawaiian shirts, and eventually he'll get to that point where he's, you know, like
fully dripped out.
Dopo.
Yeah.
You know, because like we saw Dopo's early years, he wasn't looking much. You know, it's like if anyone was playing, it was that dude.
Right. He definitely leveled up.
And kind of touching on Dopo, he's a Hatorima, right? Like, he is, they are somewhere in like Ishikawa Prefecture, kind of like hangs out. Their environment is normally like around hot springs, and they eat flames. They're portrayed as like having slender bodies, like slender legs, and then they are like just this like full of smoke and wisp, and like maybe like flickering flame for eyes, and they absorb like snuff fires as you get closer. So like if you have a lantern, you're wandering around in the mountains or something like that, if your flame gets smaller and smaller, that's the sign that they're near. And
yo, that's tight.
I had a really hard time looking it up. Like every time I looked up Hatorima, half of it would be go to like Tataki Taigo or something like that. You know, it was like Yokai Watch, like a kids show. And I was just like, and it reminded me of like the bombs from Final Fantasy, just like this flame thing that like healed when you burned them.
Sure.
And I'm like, is that a reference?
Maybe.
Is that a reference in Final Fantasy? I don't know.
Yeah.
But then I found out like a little article about it, and they're like, yeah, this is like a really, really minor yokai, very obscure. And I'm like, that tracks. Dopo's just a nobody.
Yes. Yo.
And I was like, I loved that. I was like, this is actually kind of funny. This makes my frustration completely worth it.
Oh yeah, dude. I love that we. Yeah, I love that we're you know finally just getting the breakdown on, you know, Dopo and what he is and what his like yokai is and all of those things. Because it's like that's another thing that felt like right on time for me too. It's like you introduce the villain, you make sure that their, you know, presence is felt before all else in their design and the things that they accomplish immediately, you know, like into their characterization. He came in smoking, bro. Came in on fire, you know, with the torture and just like the really gangster mob boss demeanor and attitude, you know what I mean? And then you finally get the fight with him, and that's clenchy because it's like, oh shit, okay, we built up this big bad dude pretty well so far, and now Maruo is encountering them long before they're ready. Maruo tries to fight him, can't do anything, and then he kind of just goes back into, you know, the background to do like his dealings or whatever and continue being a character and continue making his moves. But we still don't have like the expository breakdown of who he is and how he operates. And Kaku Yuji, you know, has been kind of slowly drip feeding that through pictures of him in flashbacks with Kyo looking way dorkier than he does now. So that makes you wonder, how did he go from that to this? And then you see the rivalry and like kind of bitterness that Katone has, you know, for Doppo, especially that hits a lot harder once we get the Kyo flashback, you know what I mean? And then now that this much storytelling has been devoted to Doppo without actually giving us his exposition, he's had that enigmatic big bad in the background flair. And now, right on time, boom, let's start saying everything we know about Doppo. You know what I mean? Like, let's shatter the veil and show you who this guy really is. Now that like peak interest in the enigmacy is kind of where it's at. So like on a pacing level, this is a really good way to handle a significant villain in your story. You definitely don't just want to be like, here's the villain, kill everyone, hero beats him by the end of that stretch of storytelling. You know what I mean? Like you want to drip feed it so that, you know, the payoffs are cathartic. You know what I mean?
I'm really happy that like I'm really surprised. I've never heard of a Toriyama. Like when I was doing my research, it didn't really pop up very much. And I was like, man, maybe he's a Yuki Onna. I like that I'm wrong. I like the fact that like I was surprised. I wasn't able to just call it right out the gate from like a small clue. Yeah. And like I like that they took this minor thing that was the fire-eating yokai and like thinking about how that functions and how they could make that more interesting. And then using that as a red herring by creating all that ice and stuff.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, I'm the fire eater. Let's take it one step further. I eat heat.
Yes.
And by doing so, I can cause... And he was talking about how molecules, cells rupture after like water freezes in them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how he's been just eating the heat within the air to cause molecules to clench up and crystallize into ice.
Right.
And I'm like, what? Wait, what? God, it was there the entire time.
Right. Now, and this is like broken, you know, to me as like, you know, an X-Men fan, because you have Bobby Drake, who, you know, is Iceman, and in his original characterization, he was just like a dude who could throw snowballs at you. And then over time, you know what I mean, he actually becomes more ice than snow, until eventually you get a situation where a telepath looks into his mind and goes, oh my God, your full potential is way crazier than what you realize it is. You're actually just controlling the rate at which molecules vibrate. Like, you're not just throwing snowballs at people. You're actually like a force of nature entirely with this ability, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you go over here and do Ayashimon, and you have this guy who steals heat, and that's his power, and that's really cool. But he is also talking about molecule vibration. And like molecule, just like he just has an understanding of that stuff personally. So it's like, how broken can he possibly be if he is self-aware of how his ability works on a molecular level? You know what I mean? Like, that's fucked up to think about.
Part of me wants to see him do a fight where like it's a big metal box, like a corridor.
Yeah.
And it's metal plates on the floor, and there's heat applied to the floor. So he forces Maruo to run through like a skillet of a hallway, and then he steals the heat from it and like turns the whole thing to like icy stuff. So he gets an infusion of heat, turns everything icy, and then fights Maruo on a place with like poor footing after
Oh
like burning the
man.
shit out of his feet. I
Yeah.
want to see something like
That'd
that.
be tight. There's a lot of really crazy applications that Dopo can be given. You know what I mean? Because it's like his ability is just like that. Like once you consider it on like that conceptual of a level, you can fill in gaps crazy from like in between the surface level explanation and the deepest explanation possible. So like I'm really excited about that.
I want to see that. There's this moment like when they're doing the training stuff and he's trying to get the chestnuts and they pop and like crack and like bap him in the face. It made me think of like Yuji's training situation with like the corpse puppet.
And watching the movies.
Just get. It's like I was like, yeah, there's my slapstick.
Yes.
Get dunked on, Maru.
But it serves multiple purposes, and that's like the best thing, you know what I mean? I feel like manga does this kind of thing so well, where it can give you slapstick style comedy like that, while also being very informative for the reader as far as world building goes, and also character building for the character in question that's going through the training at the same time. So when scenes serve multiple purposes like that, you know what I mean? Like those are the cream of the crop scenes, you know what I mean? The more purposes a scene serves, the better, obviously. So it's like whenever Japan just has such a charming way of wrapping up all of these purposes in such a, you know, unique aesthetic wrapping. You know what I mean? That it's just like, man, I fucking love this medium. Because it's like it has so much style. You know what I mean? And especially because they came into the situation a little bit later than, you know, America did. You know what I mean? At least in the more modern sense that we have now. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
and like the history of comics and
yeah,
like the overlap.
Right. So you're coming from something that already has so much, you know, established in its foundation and like creating such a unique, you know, vibe for your entire area of the medium. It's just like I just be gushing all the time to myself. Yeah.
I also think that like if you go into like Japanese classical art where you see like you know, they had the 2D like the flat silhouettes of samurais, you know, fighting like the giant skeleton. You see like paintings and stuff of like that. So I feel like there was so much of like a rich visual tradition in Japanese art that translated really well to comics.
Yes.
And then Japanese art itself always tended to combine words with pictures already. So like calligraphy, right? Calligraphy being both visual and literate art. So like I feel like for them they had like so many strong foundations that comics just made sense, and that's why they don't really undervalue comics as a medium.
Right.
Like in the West, people still like are like, oh yeah, you know, comics are for kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wouldn't recommend most of these stories for kids.
Right.
They'll make you cry or give you trauma or something. Like be grown and like read comics and like like read comics that are appropriate to you, right? Like but like
to your point about how it doesn't matter as much in America on the comic book side of things as it does in Japan, that makes a lot of sense because for the longest time, comic books were Japan's only source of media. Like coming out of like, you know, the war and World War II and shit, they didn't really have the best economic infrastructure or like any economic infrastructure at all, really. You know what I mean? Because they're coming
rebuild from scratch.
Yeah, they had to rebuild from scratch. Yeah, so like
hard.
the only kind of media that they could afford to produce was comic books, and not just comic books, black and white comic books, because they couldn't even afford color. You know what I mean? So like that's why it's always going to comic books are always going to matter so much more to Japanese people than American people because it's coming from a place of this is all we had at one point, from a very traumatic point in their history.
Cultural regrowth.
Yeah, cultural regrowth and trauma, exactly.
Yeah, it's just I loved the burning building scene, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like Ozunu was right. He's like, yeah, it's better to fast dump him in like a real fight with an opponent, sink or swim. And he's just like, I liked that this is a fight that has no real target, right? Like he's fighting the environment.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
PvE.
you know what? Yeah, he's doing PvE. And I really appreciate that. I was like, you know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, Dopo is a supernatural flame. You're gonna beat up an actual apartment fire. And I'm like, I like this. It was like this whole chapter is very satisfying in that sense.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Ayashimon is firing on all cylinders. I can't I think I've already like multiple times in this review stated everything that it's doing correctly for me, but just for the record, I love the cast. I love the pacing. The world is being built brilliantly around the cast work and overarching narrative progression. You know what I mean? Everything just feels like it falls into place inside of Ayashimon, and that there's a very clear plan and structure for it, and that just makes you feel good. You know what I mean? And the way that the plot progresses in the ways that we've been talking about the entire review, about how concepts and explanations and things come right on time, all of those things just... I can't cross my fingers tight enough for the success of Ayashimon. But, yeah, man. Do you have anything else for Ayashimon this week?
Honestly, no. This has been a very thorough one just because of all the new like terms and stuff.
Yeah, this one was chunky.
The breakdowns of stuff. Oh
yeah.
My God.
Yeah. Good shit though, man. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. That will do it for this chapter of Ayashimon. All right, moving into Sakamoto Days, chapter 66, Lag. I fucking love this chapter, man.
I really enjoyed like all the different perspectives that came with this one. Like, I know I've mentioned it a couple times where like the fights are all 3D and they focus on like different angles and stuff.
Yeah, very 3D.
Like, this chapter did great. Like there was this one moment with Torimaru standing on her weapon, like her axe bayonet just wedged into stone, just staring at Shin at the bottom of this river, and she's like,
Yeah.
Just like, I love that part, because like that little perspective of her just like looking down on him while talking shit.
Right.
And I'm just like, that works. This works. That's a nice combo.
The fighting styles are like so gas in Sakamoto Days, and they're so well represented, you know, even outside of like very high octane, high tension action sequences, because obviously when they're throwing kicks and throwing punches and using weapons, it's like those are the most obvious examples of these characters and their fighting styles and their personalities in combat. But just this one panel right here of Torimaru standing on the axe, you know, or standing on the gun with the axe head like stabbed in the side of the cliff face and shit, like to just like, you know, overlook like the battlefield and shit with her hands behind her back, and like it's just like, man, like, yeah, like that's what I'm talking about right there. Like I love shit like that, you know what I mean? So Sakamoto Days is really good for that. I love this dynamic between Torimaru and Shin too, like inside of this fight, because it's like it's a really interesting kind of like character spotlight, you know, in between the action, right? Because you have Torimaru, who represents a fan of the Sakamoto that people see on the surface through myth and legend and whatever small, rare, you know, occurrences they have where they've actually seen him in the field. And then you have Shin, who represents a fan of the actual Sakamoto, or at least where Sakamoto is in his life right now. You know what I mean?
It's the contrast between private and public admiration.
Right, exactly.
And I love that, because it's like, Sakamoto, this is the deal with parasocial relationships and like celebrity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And even though Shin knows Sakamoto in a way that this girl couldn't possibly, you know what I mean? Like he was still able to communicate that to her in a way that she was able to understand, despite not knowing the real Sakamoto. And so when that scene comes, you know, towards the end of the chapter, when he saves her and she's like, why the fuck did you do that? And he's like, Sakamoto would have done that. It's like, does she know that? Like, does that fit in with her understanding of Sakamoto currently, probably not, but she still got the message. Like, she still felt like he was telling the truth, you know what I mean? Like, he still properly communicated his admiration for Sakamoto in a way that she was able to absorb and respect, even though she has an entirely different outlook on who this person even is. You know what I mean? So it was just really cool character moments for Shin, for sure, but also this brand new Torimaru character who's had a very interesting arc in the very small amount of time that she's been in the story. So I love how that's communicated in this chapter. Yeah,
I really like it. The part where like page 14 where you can see like the echo of Sakamoto, and it's like he's still bigger than Shin, you know, that kind of larger than life presence, but it's like, okay, yeah, you know, you're not quite filling up the silhouette, but you're looking in the right direction, you know? And it's like, hey, you know, youngin', you're like, Shin was talking, like, at the beginning of, like, previous few chapters, like, hey, Mr. Sakamoto, like, I admire you, but, like, we're enemies. I need to prove myself. Yes. And I'm like, you're doing great. You're doing great, kid. Love that for you.
Oh, yeah.
I really liked this moment with Shin on page 8, where he's like, I need to figure out another way to win. What can I do? And his, like, telepathy senses the fish.
Yes.
And then that snaps him into, like, oh, I could just use the water. Fuck, why didn't I think of that?
And I'm, like, so mad that I didn't fucking notice these fish until, like, you said, I love this scene on page 8. And then you saying that and me going to the page at the same time, for some reason, made me realize the screen tone fish in the second to last panel on page 8 that I just completely went over my head before. And then they even use it again. Excuse me. They even use it again on the bottom, you know, panel of page 10. And I didn't notice it there either. Yeah, and I'm like so angry that I didn't notice these fucking...
I didn't...
Oh,
you must have been speed reading. I didn't notice it on 10. I just noticed it on page 8, and that's what I remembered when I went through it the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually really cool because this means that he's progressed and that he can not only listen to human voices,
yes,
but living creature voices.
Yes.
So now he can hear all voices, but that means he could also eventually communicate with that one sniper's bird.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, fuck yeah. That'll be cool, man, if they lean into that.
But like I think that this is the sign of an upgrade, right?
Yeah,
like for his
for sure.
It's just like, and I'm just like, I wonder where you can go with that, because like there's in like Spy X Family, you have, you know, the dog and the little telepath girl, and they're sharing thoughts and like communicating a little bit. I'm like, that's funny. I like that. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
So I want to see what Shin can do with that kind of stuff.
And I like how the growth is represented too, because he's been talking for a while now about like what would Sakamoto do, but it's like, man, I can't always, like, Sakamoto's not always going to be here, you know, to like hold me down. I think he said this like multiple times now during his own little personal, you know, journeys inside the arcs, even though Sakamoto is there somewhere in the background. I think since they started this exam, even on the plane when they were doing like the battle royale on the plane, he's like, Sakamoto is here, but like I need to progress personally. I can't just lean on Sakamoto, boom bap, and I'm sitting here going, okay, well how is that going to form inside of Shin? Like that realization is cool, but how are you going to put it into practice? And him having a very cerebral ability inside of his clairvoyance, it makes sense that his progress would be shown in the form of his mentality upgrading, right? Because it is a very mental power. So if he gets into a more mature headspace, he'll unlock deeper aspects of this power. And unlocking deeper aspects of this power gives him the facilities that he needs to operate separate from Sakamoto. So it all just feels so good inside
Yeah.
of his progression, because it's like, I fight with Sakamoto, I get whooped because Sakamoto is better, Sakamoto's fine over there, I'm his little guy, so I can do certain things, but when it comes down to it, I need Sakamoto to save me for the really oppressive physical walls that I might run into. And that felt good for a while. And now we're at this point now where it's like, we all got to get tighter on our own because these motherfuckers are cooking over here and they're way tighter than us. Slur and his homeboy, you know, or whatever that we see at the end of the chapter. I always forget his name, but it's like those guys are building something very serious, and they are well above the capability of Shin and Sakamoto. So it's like, how are we going to upgrade ourselves so that we're ready for that coming confrontation? And Shin separating himself from Sakamoto and going, no, I need to be able to do things entirely on my own so that I can fight better with Sakamoto instead of potentially being a liability because I'm not capable enough in the upcoming conflicts. So all of that makes sense, but it's like, physically, what kind of training, you know, would there be? And is that really the route that you want to take with Shin, who has such a strong superpower that is rather nerfed compared to other telepaths that we get in other areas of fiction? So it's like, no, this was always going to be a more cerebral growth, you know, for Shin than anything else. And the way that he ties it into his reliance on Sakamoto as a way to push past that mental limiter to unlock deeper areas of his telepathy is really hitting hard for me right now in this chapter.
Yeah, he says it himself in this chapter. I have to win this in my own way. I can't even pretend that I'm going to do it like Mr. Sakamoto. We simply have different abilities. The part that I think is, like, this arc has been great for Shin. I love that for Shin. Like, I think this next opponent is going to be a huge barrier against Shin, because this is a remote controlled bad guy. Like, how are you gonna mind read and dodge a guy who isn't in control of his own body?
Right. Maybe he could find out that very truth by reading his mind and go, yeah, this guy's here, but that's not who's controlling this body. And maybe, you know, it depends on like what kind of, you know, how this technology works, this VR technology works that they have, you know what I mean? But Shin could potentially figure out what's going on, you know, with his telepathy, and whether or not he'll actually be able to then by extension, you know, read the thoughts of God, what is his name?
Shania?
The dude in the VR gear that like rolls with slur.
Gaku.
Oh my God, it's so simple too. It's only 2 fucking syllables. Okay.
Yeah, but like I definitely had to look that up again because I was like, I'm actually really bad at names.
Yeah, Gaku. Okay, so what I'm saying is that like it's either going to be a situation where Shin will try to read the mind of this assailant and go, he's not the person driving this car. And maybe that's the extent of it, and maybe that's all the information that he needs in order to get himself and Torimaru out of this situation. Or it could go a step further and go, okay, he's not the one driving this car, it's Gaku, and maybe he doesn't recognize, you know, Gaku or whatever, but maybe he's then just able to, by extension, read the mind of Gaku in his puppeteering of this vessel. And that could be, you know, really major too. I feel like it could go either way, or maybe even you get one after the other. Maybe he realizes, you know, the thing and then has a strategy for that and then goes, yeah.
I think the lag is going to come into play, where he's like, oh, this guy's really strong, and I can't get a good read on him because my telepathy is not functioning on the person that is actually making decisions.
Yeah.
It's like, but he can at least have a little bit of lag. They mentioned a little bit of lag, so there's always going to be like a little delay in between moves.
Oh, sure.
At least delay between combos.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to take that advantage. He's going to look for that opportunity and maybe have to work with Torimaru or Kaji to take down like autopilot Shania.
Yeah.
So
I guess what I'm saying is that like maybe there is potentially some like mental overlap inside of how Gaku and his technology controls this body and how Shin reads minds. So maybe,
Oh, he
yeah,
might notice like a mechanical overlay or like static.
it just all depends on like what the explanation for this technology even is. Because if Gaku is essentially replacing the consciousness of this person so that he can control him, then maybe Shin reading the mind of this guy is the same thing as reading the mind of Gaku,
Oh,
depending on how, you know, the technology for the control is explained. I guess is like
yeah, or like
where I'm
overlapping.
going.
He's
Yeah,
like he might be like picking up like multiple voices
yeah,
in that kind of sense, and he's like, oh wait, and then like one's really tinny, but that seems to be the one, and really faint and very
yeah,
tinny,
yeah.
but that's the one that seems to be driving.
Right.
And so he suddenly starts picking up on that, or I think he is going to have to because like I think what's going to happen is he's going to panic. He's going to struggle with this opponent because he can't get a good proper read on them.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen because they introduced Kaji already, and they say that Kaji is extremely shy.
Mm. Oh yeah,
So
this
he doesn't
dude.
speak. So he doesn't speak.
Yeah.
So Shin's way of using his telepathy against an opponent that he can't read is that he's going to read his allies' thoughts and be able to work as a teammate to overcome an opponent that he can't read. And I think that's important too because he was talking about how, because he beats Toromaru in the sense that, like, I need to be able to stand on my own. And then his other goal is, I want to be able to fight alongside Sakamoto. So Kaji is going to be that test for him to be able to work with someone using his telepathy in tandem with
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I feel like that's the direction where this next following chapter is going to go because of what I've seen so far.
I like that. Yeah, I really like that. And this Kaji dude is like funny because it's like when I guess I had I don't know if how much we've seen him before this chapter, but I like turned the page and was like, wait a minute, who the fuck is this guy? And like before I really, you know, had an understanding of what these dialogue bubbles were really saying and realized that this was like a comedic scene, I guess I had like just gone into the scene thinking that this dude was like scouting the situation out, like waiting for his moment, like thinking about what he was going to do. And then I find out like, no, oh my God, this is just a joke about how shy he is. And then he immediately goes like, all right, maybe I'll just rub this guy's back. And he's like, yo, could you not fucking touch me? And he's like, oh, and it was funny, but I'm like, now he's got even more of a reason to be shy. He like stepped outside of his comfort zone to be a pal, and the dude said, fuck off. And now he's just like, oh. And I just thought that was so funny.
That part made me cackle a little bit. I was like, "Hey!"
Yeah, I was like, damn.
Poor buddy.
Yeah.
But that was fun.
Oh yeah, man.
This is just a fun, straightforward chapter. This is a great Shin arc, to be honest.
Yeah, dude. I'm like really loving the Shin focus that we're getting. I hope we get like more Lu focus like later. I hope that she isn't just like entirely relegated to a background character like once the heat starts really rising. I mean, like they haven't really been going out of their way to establish her, at least in my memory, as like someone who's supposed to be involved in everything Sakamoto and Shin is doing, which is just kind of like would be kind of like sad like for me if that was like the case like permanently. You know what I mean? I definitely hope that we spin back around, pick up Lu, and like give, you know, her some focus and like get her like on the team here, because just it's like she's there, so like I feel like she should be. You know what I mean? I'm not like the biggest fan of like female leads just like fading into the background. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
so I hope Sakamoto Days.
Exist.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope Sakamoto Days does that. But like for the Shin arc that we're in right now, I'm loving it. And if this is the kind of shit that we can get for Shin, then I feel like this is the kind of focus that like anybody else on like, you know, the lesser important character side of the cast could get. So like I'm hopeful for that. But yeah, I love the chapter, man. The next one's gonna be major, bro. Holy shit. Like I am so excited to see how this VR like actually works, if we get like a real in-depth breakdown on it. It's obviously going back into what I was saying about the potential, you know, continuation of the plot in regard to how Shin interacts with this puppet, and whether or not he will be able to read the mind of the puppet, or maybe notice that there's no mind there and then they're just cooked and they have to like fly by the seat of their pants with no telepathy help at all, or if there is some kind of mental overlap, like I was saying, depending on the explanation of the technology, to where Shin can go, oh, if I read this dude's mind, I'm also reading Gaku's mind. Either way could be cool, but I'm just like super excited for it no matter what.
I don't know if it's gonna be a jumble or if it's gonna be a void. You
Yeah,
know, it's just
yeah,
like what,
yeah.
ah!
Hell yeah, man.
The mystery. I don't really have much else to say about the chapter. I do think it would be interesting because I think that Liu Xiaoteng is gonna be like taking care of the shop at the moment. But I also kind of want to see like Torimaru. It would be a fun recurring character, but probably not a main cast member. Just a nice recurring character.
She might be dead.
She might be dead. To be fair,
because see, like here's the thing, right? It's like the Gaku puppet comes in and just crushes her blindside. Entirely element of surprise, direct hit. And he commented on the lag, so maybe the lag is the reason why she survives, but I don't know why. Or maybe she just has that, you know, thick of a constitution and she just survives it because she's tanky. But I want to believe that Gaku is capable enough to just murder people as effectively as he normally does because he's fucking Gaku. And we know that he's a cold-blooded murderer, very high-level assassin. So, like, if he was here in person, like, would he have hit this girl in a way to where she didn't die for some reason? Absolutely. No. He'd be like, fuck no.
Through people.
Yeah. Like, he doesn't care about, like, pulling his punches. Yeah, he doesn't care about that kind of thing. If he's going out of his way to make a move on you, he's trying to kill you. So if this doesn't kill her, then that's either because this puppet body doesn't have the same facilities as Gaku, which makes sense. But then that makes me wonder, like, okay, obviously you don't want to be there in person, but then if you're not going to be there in person, then why would you task this dummy body with whatever goal you're trying to accomplish in infiltrating this exam arc, right? Because it's like, if he's not going to be able to have the same output as you, then naturally that's not going to be like as effective, unless he just, you know, thinks that this body is enough to do what he's trying to do in this exam arc. Yeah. He wasn't expecting Sakamoto and Shin to be here, I guess, maybe. Because it's like you want to be incognito, you want to be under the radar, you don't just want to be popping up everywhere when like people know your face and know that like you're on fuck shit. So like I get that, and you're just scouting or whatever. But it's just like, man, it's like he really was feeling himself that much that he thinks that him just controlling this random person is enough to get him through this whole assassination exam. Like, who is this guy that he's controlling? Is this dude anyone of note? Yeah, you know, like, I don't know.
What's the will behind the body, right? Or is this guy a full robot? I have no idea.
Ooh.
I mean, we got a guy who's effectively a cyborg, you know, the first immortal guy when they went to Shin's lab, you know.
Yeah.
So there's like a question of like, is this a real human being? Or is this another cyborg? How much is left of the original human being? I can see why like they would add like the visual thing so that they could like personally see and evaluate, as opposed to allowing an agent to like make like a weaker agent to make evaluations. Like, oh, this person's really strong, and like Gaku can look through the VR and be like, he's strong, but like not by our standards.
Sure.
Just your standards, you know, that kind of thing. And I feel like it's a great way to scout by having literal eyes on the situation and having piloting something that has less power, but using Gaku's technique.
Right.
So Gaku's technique is the barrier. It's going to be what's keeping this Shania in the game, but then that person's like, in comparison to Gaku's nerfed strength, is going to be kind of what the saving grace of everyone that gets tested.
Yeah, okay.
Because like Gaku was able to hold it up against Takamura, who is like theorized to be like the strongest in the series.
He was kind of standing up. I feel like Takamura had him dead to rights, like super like low diff.
If he didn't have teammates, he would have been.
But he was still there, ready to stance up with dude. So it's like he's got heart at least. I don't think he has I don't think he has the facilities to really go toe to toe with Takamura, at least not yet. But he definitely was trying to do it. You know what I mean?
He definitely has some chops, and I feel like that's kind of like the filter that they're adding to that. Like scouting process. That's just my take on it.
I like that.
Yeah.
The last thing that I really had for Sakamoto is just this last double page spread. I really like the art in it. And it's really the visor, I feel like, that I keep coming back to on like what I really love about this spread, because like Sakamoto Days art style, the line work is very sketchy, and there's like broken lines everywhere. It's reminiscent of like Akutami Gege's artwork right now, at least on like the line work side of things. Obviously, anatomy and proportions are a lot different from Sakamoto to Jujutsu Kaisen a lot of the time, but the line work I feel like is similar enough to make the comparison. So getting this reflection on the visor, like in such detail, like this is so much more reflection like than I would expect from such a scratchy, style of art. You know what I mean? Like you usually only see this level of detail in like reflections in like, I mean, I don't want to say photorealism or anything like that, but it does feel like almost like, it's dipping a pinky toe into photorealism for this visor reflection effect in, on top of an art style that is, relatively scratchy and messy. You know what I mean? So that was just a cool contrast to kind of like get in this spread.
I really enjoyed it. Like I was like, that is a fantastic detail. Like you don't get stuff like normally you get that like level of detail in like more detail intensive series.
Yeah, like a Boichi series or something.
Yeah, like in Boichi or like a Kentaro Miura kind of series, or like cover spreads.
Yeah.
Right? Like something that's dedicated to a cover spread. You see kind of stuff like that. But this one was like, oh, that is like elegant. Like and if it was there, I might not have noticed, but the fact that it is there is just like, wow, that it's going the distance, right? It's the small details going a long way.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I love that. Did you have anything else for Sakamoto this week?
No, I'm just hyped for the next fight. Like back to back. Good luck, Shin.
Yeah, dude. Same. But all right, I think that'll do it for Sakamoto Days, chapter 66. All right, moving into Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 125. Mission 125. I won't let you go. I love this color page.
Ah, yeah. I always forget that Tayo's a redhead.
I do too. I forget that shit all the time. I know
we've discussed this a couple times, but it's always like, wait a second.
Yeah, like, hey. Yeah, because it's like his hair's just stark black, you know what I mean, in the manga. So it's like, man, it's like usually, I want to say, and maybe I'm entirely wrong on this, but I want to say like usually if your hair is a different color, like a red especially, it's not usually represented as stark black.
Yeah, it's usually represented as gray.
Yeah, like some kind of shade of gray, but whatever. I love this cover. Yeah, I like how there's such a diversity in Hitsuji Gondaira's color pages, I want to say. Like, it's not always just like one kind of style. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a lot of range inside of these color pages. And I like this one specifically because it's like, it feels watercolor in the background, but then also feels like kind of colored pencil-ish in some of the areas too.
I wanted to break down sort of like the symbolism inside that, because I was listening to a discussion about Studio Ghibli movies and the concept of like there's always a scene where they're passing through a tunnel or a pathway or a hallway, and it's often a symbol of like translating from death to life, that kind of thing. They're talking how like Ponyo is a story of tragedy, and it's creepy because they go through a tunnel but they never come back. So they were like, is the meaning of the movie that they die? Whereas like Spirited Away, she goes on the train to the afterlife, meets things, and then comes back to the land of the living, effectively, like that kind of thing. So like I was thinking for like this is a critical moment. We think that the eldest brother's dying to this poison, so like this alleyway acting as sort of like a hallway, Koichiro's like going towards the light, so to speak. It's like, is this a sign that he's going to die, or he's at the cusp of dying, or he's on the path towards death, and that this is their vain, like not vain, but like dire struggles to like keep him from like following through.
Right, because it's like you have Kyoichiro deeper down the hallway than Taiyo is, so closer to death, and Taiyo is following him down the hallway to bring him back before he fully dies at the end of the hallway.
That's kind of what I get from this this alley cover page, and I'm just
I like that. That's really cool.
It's very simple. It's very understated, but like I feel like that's kind of what the visual language is telling me.
Hell yeah, dude! I like that a lot. Plus, the color story is on fire, bro. I love the greens next to these like deep purples and like crimsons, and like these fuchsias above the greens, like really like there's only like 4 colors in this whole thing, and they're all used like so well.
It feels almost kaleidoscopic, like it almost has it has a rainbow in this thing, like it's got like it literally does. It has like it has violets. It does have its indigos and kind of like that soft.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally right. This is like the whole rainbow.
Literally the rainbow.
Yeah, you got the yellow into the green, you got the blue into the purple, the crimson into the orange, all the way up to the fuchsia at the top, and it's the whole shit.
It's beautiful, and it's done in sort of that noir style.
Yeah.
At first, and then they just flip it because by not leaving it black and white, it's like you hit the full spectrum in a really soft palette.
Yeah, that's really good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But this fight is tough.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the last review. But like the one thing that like just feels iffy to me about this entire situation is like, yeah, you have this poison in you, but like, why couldn't you communicate this to the family anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand like if they're trying to say like this is just like a flaw of like Kyoichiro's character to like, be the one that takes everything onto his shoulders and try to leave his family out of it for their sake, like that's all fine and dandy, but this is still a very well fleshed out and loving and understanding family that gets each other on a very deep level. So like it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't communicate his situation despite the idea that he wants to protect them by not telling them. Like, sure, that's fine, like, only on the surface for me. But, like, the more you think about it, and the more you, like, consider the family dynamic that's been established so far, it doesn't really make sense that he wouldn't just tell them what's good before leaving. Go ahead and run and disappear, but be like, hey, yo. Like, I understand it makes more sense for dramatics and plot progression and whatnot, but that just felt a little clunky to me, personally.
That's fair. I honestly think about it as Koichiro, he's afraid to die like a normal person, and he understands it. He's acting as if he admits it, like he's accepted it, but like deep down, nobody wants to die. No one wants to accept that they're gonna die. Right. And so I think that he's literally running away from his family as a form of running away from like this like inevitable death that the family heads have like laid upon him.
Okay, like, I like that.
The family did it to him, and he wants to save the rest of his family.
Yeah. And
so he's running away from his family because he can't run away from what the family heads have infected him with.
Oh, wow. That was a cool way of putting it. And you want to know what? It does feel a lot better when you consider like insecurity and like fear, right? Yeah. Because like those will just make you act irrationally.
Exactly.
Like no matter what. Like that's very regular and normal and totally understandable. So yeah.
I feel like in the West, people always talk about like, oh, let's be rational here. Let's be rational. People aren't rational. People often vote the way they feel emotionally or whatever resonates supposedly with them.
Right.
People, choose partners not on the like level of qualities or like actual common ground, but how that person makes you feel. Yeah.
And that's the slippery slope that you kind of like have to travel on when you're writing a fictional story, right? Because you want to go like as realistic as you can in certain areas to like really tap into that relatability factor, but like realistic doesn't always translate that well into like fiction, right? Because it's like, for example, in the real world, there are a bunch of people with the same name. You might have multiple people in your immediate friend circle that share names, and that's fine in the real world. But you throw a bunch of people in a comic book that have the same name, and that's gonna get awkward, even though it's realistic. That's just not a good idea to do for your story. So, like, when you talk about like rationality, like when you're talking about plotting and scripting and writing a fictional story, you want to make sure that the characters are always doing something rational. If they're rational characters, you want to tie that logic back in a way that doesn't break immersion because it's so ridiculously illogical. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like that can't be applied to every single instance of rationality in a fictional story. There are definitely a lot of like subtextual ways you can communicate irrationality in ways that make sense in your fictional story, even though originally I said I don't think this makes a whole lot of sense for him to not tell his family, you know what I mean, like what he's going through. And it felt like a narrative like device by leaving that out of the story. I was like, oh, okay, so Kyoichiro, based on my understanding of him, would logic like I feel like Kyoichiro would, even though he's in this situation, still tell his family what's going on instead of just being completely silent and mysterious about it. But when you factor in what he's going through mentally, and like especially the way that you put it with his fear of death, and that beautiful analog that you created, and that beautiful like why am I blanking on this word right now? Oh my god.
Explanation.
It was, yeah, like you know what I'm saying. Oh my god, I'm like so mad at myself right now. Like even though like
5 times a day.
Yeah, like once you consider that, then yeah, like you can make, you know, the irrational decision to not explain your situation to your family feel a lot better. You know what I mean? Like once you consider things like that. I'm so mad that I just like lost my thought on that. Now I feel like a fucking lunatic who makes no fucking sense, but hopefully you guys understand what I mean.
Oh man. This was kind of interesting. I really liked how the team continues. They did this in the last chapter where they were all using their strengths to help suppress Kyoichiro and buy enough time for Taiyo to arrive.
Yeah.
The part that I really liked was 8-9. When Kengo mimics Shinzo and does his like body doubles.
Yeah.
And just a ton of Shinzos come out with like the withered spider gas. And then he goes meow, and then it hits the gas and the cloud has a cat face on it. And I was like, that's fucking adorable. That's very Kengo.
Yes.
And then I like that they did that to kind of hide Shinzo from like repercussion. You know what I mean? To have all those body doubles.
Yeah, because, for sure. Can't find the real one, so his, you know, his HP isn't at stake.
I thought it was clever. I was like, why? Initially, I was like, why him? And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Of course, there's gonna be like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That it's a safety measure, and I appreciate that.
Hell yeah. Inside of the choreography, I was like so blown away by just like the level of like landscape damage and manipulation that like Futaba and Kyoichiro like both have in their arsenal. It makes a little bit more sense for Kyoichiro, I want to say, to be able to like, I mean, like it makes sense for both of them because they're both powerhouses. But I like just remember, you know, Futaba's a power set, you know, operating inside of like wind and like momentum and, you know, like things like that. So she can create these like force waves of like, you know, kinetic force pressure, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I'm sure that I just like don't have like the proper like understanding of her ability maybe in this critique that I'm giving here. But I'm sitting here going like, Futaba can do shit like this, like raise like whole walls of earth out of the ground. I was like, that's fucking insane. Not that it doesn't make sense, because like all you have to do is just put the power output wherever you need it to be to allow this kind of thing. But I just like wasn't like ready to see Futaba do that. And then like later on in the chapter, Kyoichiro does his steel spider stuff and then just makes like a giant wave of like avalanche, like rocks and shit. And I'm just like, bro, like where are the strings connected that are that are do it's just like so hard for me to like picture the strings doing this.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm like, holy fucking shit.
I wonder about that, or like, is he, because he's having like this poison bloom, right? Is he still like going through like a bloom power upgrade, like a spike of power? Like the idea of like it's killing him, but it's also enhancing him, and that's why it's killing him. Is it's overclocking his abilities, perhaps? I don't know. It's not really stated. It's not even really implied, but it's
Right.
like, there's a potential in there. Like I could see that happening. Like
Yeah.
like
I guess I was just waiting for like a Togashi style or like a Gege style, like superimposed like narration box, like over the thing explaining like why the power was able to create this effect. Maybe we already have enough in the story to explain this, you know what I mean? And I just don't remember it or whatever, but I just remember being so taken aback by like the amount of like landscape and like environmental influence that these powers are having.
Collateral damage.
Yeah,
like,
I was just
we're
like,
not
holy
used to
shit.
seeing that.
Yeah.
Especially because like I think the reason we don't normally see that is because they're assassins, and so like for them they try to exert the most amount of pressure with the least amount of force, kind of thing.
Sure.
And so, but this is them like
Just going all out, no
going
filter, no
all
limits.
out,
Yeah.
no holds barred. Like this is a family fight feud. This is a family feud. It's supposed to be messy. And so I think that the environmental damage is kind of like a visual indicator of like how volatile this family fight is.
Yeah.
And how like, you know, they're afraid of the family being torn apart, and these are people that are willing to move heaven and earth, and it's a lot of earth to keep this shit together. That's kind of what I'm feeling. I expect kind of a explanation next series, just because Taiyo literally just makes contact with Koichiro, like forces his way through the steel spider net, and like
that was raw.
Grabs onto him.
Yeah, that was super
2021.
Raw.
I was just like,
yeah, I was like, oh fuck, what are you doing? But then I'm like going back through the chapter, and I'm like, well, nah, because we totally get this flashback of him talking to Dude, Kyoichiro's homeboy, or whatever. And he's like, that power will save Kyoichiro. Take that profuse blooming with you and face off against him. So I'm assuming that Taiyo's very unique style of blooming might just be like a direct counter to Kyoichiro's style of blooming with this poison. Either that, or it's something where like they cancel each other out if it's not a direct counter and the poison isn't. I want to assume that that's why it's okay that he's just outright grabbing him despite the peril. You know?
I think I know what it is. So, the poison is specific to the family because the heads were there. And the heads are talking about, like, we are the family, we are the most important thing, the Tsubomi is the most important thing. They're focusing on the family. They're not focusing on, like, but, like, Taiyo's different because he married into the family. The poison is not coded for specific Yozakura bloodline. He just happens to have a graft of the Somanin to bloom himself. So he's a whole hybrid of like a different strain of the Yozakura blooming.
Right, and so then the poison might
not coded for him, coded for his bloodline, because he's not related to the Yozakuras, it's not going to affect him as bad, and it might be able to balance the whole thing out.
I like that.
It's like inbreeding, right? Like the poison could be a form of like inbreeding, right? Because a lot of royalty, like the Habsburgs and stuff, they had massive genetic deficiencies because their their gene pool was so limited, and they kept marrying their relatives and stuff to like maintain monarchy. So I'm taking that idea of like limited gene pool, introducing a new bloom, a new strain into the genetic pool that is the bloom. It might help balance things and like revitalize and bolster the like constitution of the plants themselves.
Because I really like this because
like pugs.
It's like especially when you were saying about how the poison is specifically coded for you know, blood-born Yozakura family members, and Taiyo doesn't fit that description because he was married into the family and then received the power later and the blood later, you know what I mean? So this isn't something that he was. Yeah, I like that. I really like it. He's not coded to be affected by the poison the same way the rest of the family is. So that's cool.
It's like pugs, right? Like I ran into a pug yesterday. His name was oh, it wasn't Pochita. It was something else. Nochi.
Nochi.
There was a dog named Nochi.
That is close to Pochita.
And I asked him, I was like, hey man, how's the breathing problems on this dog? He's like, oh no, he's not a full-bred pug. He's like a little bit of like lab in him, and he's, you know, we enlarged his nostrils when he was young, but we really didn't have to do too much because he's not full-bred. And I was like, it reminded me of like people doing dog breeding and like undoing specific dog breeds to like alleviate genetic problems. So I feel like this is kind of that kind of vein of thing.
That's cool. That's a cool way to look at it,
when it comes to like the Yozakura blooming strains.
Yeah, I think I like, you know, and it could obviously just be an entirely different explanation. We'll have to see what Hitsuji Gondaira has for us in the coming weeks. But I think I like both of these ideas. Either, you know, Taiyo's unique style of blooming is a direct counter, or at least, you know, a double negative kind of effect, as you know, Kyoichiro's very unique style of poison blooming that he has going on right now, and they cancel each other out, or Taiyo's just directly counters it. Whatever, I'm cool with an explanation like that. I'm also cool with, you know, the potential explanation that you gave about just not being coded properly for the poison.
Yeah, it's tricky. There's this one part that I really thought was interesting, because he was talking about, it's like, I may want to kill you, but I'll never let you die, even if it kills me. And so when he's got Taiyo wrapped up, he's saying, he's like, hey man, these threads defeated the Yozakura family heads. They'll cut you if you move.
Yeah.
And he still goes through it. I love that he's like, I know that the way these threads are wrapped around me, it won't kill me. It'll just hurt like a motherfucker.
Yes.
So I'm willing to take harm to save you because you've done that for me.
Yeah.
Regardless of how minuscule the harm you actually took in saving me. But
saw right through the bluff, though. You know what I mean? He was like, yeah, you said that, but like, you know that I'm Taiyo, and that I totally am the kind of person that would still try to move despite that warning. So just in case, you're going to make it not lethal, and I know that. You're not
going to keep it tight around my neck. You know, you're not going to do that kind of thing. You're going to leave my carotids alone.
Yeah. And I love the.
But I'm still going
to. Yeah, and I love the dialogue on 15 where he's like, you're still green, but you seem to have passed the stage of needing me to protect you, because it's like he's obviously sitting here going, if you have made it this far in your struggle against me to prevent me from leaving, and we had our little tussle, and you're still right here on the cusp of reaching me, it's like you have progressed far enough to where I don't have to worry about you anymore, and that makes me feel good as someone who's on his way out the door. Like Kyoichiro knows he's just about done with all of his living, or at least he thinks so. So this is comforting to him to know that Taiyo has come to a point to where he can get this far in a confrontation with Kyoichiro, because now he's like, I can leave the rest to you type shit, and he feels good about that, which is like really wholesome and cool in such a dark and shitty situation.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's also a point of like him going through like the stages of grief a little bit, where he's like upward hope, reconstruction. He's right at the point of like acceptance of death, you know, because he's like, hey, you know, his denial phase was basically just running away, right?
Right.
And then I just imagine it's like, hey, you know what? He's glad that like, you're still green, but you've done well. You don't need me anymore. Is he telling himself that it's like, I don't have to worry. I can leave in peace. I don't have to like take care of them. He's trying to like shed his obligations. So he feels okay.
Yeah, maybe he just feels less bad You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he's
That he
trying to
has
feel
to
less bad
that he
about
has
dying.
to do like what he's doing. He's like, man, it sucks that I'm dying. I love my family. I hate that like they're still potentially in danger, but like they're definitely more in danger with me being around. So at least I'm gonna get out of here, and I hope my family can survive this. And then now here comes Tayo with all of this ambition and heart and drive and progress, and now he's like, damn, at least there's Tayo. At least I can feel a little bit better leaving, knowing that Tayo, can hold it down. You know what I mean? Like, so that is kind of like how I interpreted it.
It's like he's gonna endure in my stead, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
type shit. Because it's like before it was just like I'm leaving and my family is like flailing in the wind over here. You know what I mean? But now it's like I'm still leaving, but at least Tayo has the facilities.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that he's being reached out to. Like,
And
I
it's
mean,
really
that's
just
the
in regard to
point.
Mutsumi, obviously, is what I'm saying. Is that it's really just in regard to Mutsumi. Obviously, the rest of the family members are more than capable enough on their own as professionals. But like, it's really just like, man, Mutsumi's gonna have no one to protect her. I have to leave. Oh yeah, Tayo, and he's capable enough to do so. I feel great. I feel better about this now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ah, man. I wonder. I'm really fascinated. I want to see what happens next chapter with the different strains, and like, is there going to be cross pollination? How are we going to
Mm.
get into like this weird horticulture? Like, I
Yo.
want to know.
Yes, yes.
Ah,
And Gondire is like really good with like the plant-based like research and explanations in things and how he incorporates it into not just the power system but like also other like poetic symbolic things. So I'm sure he's going to
yeah.
like snap on whatever explanation he gives for this entire situation. So I'm excited for that.
And it's been an ongoing theme because like even the first villain, the first bad guy that like kidnapped Mitsumi was a guy called the Gardener.
Mm.
He had little like
Yo.
rose cut. He had like rose
He
cutting
had like
scissors.
scissors.
It's
Yeah.
always been there. So like I want this
Yes.
horticulture moment to slap. I
Yeah.
want it to happen.
It's definitely going to. Holy shit, I forgot all about that. That's fucking
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm drooling, salivating for the moment.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
Same, bro.
but yeah, this is just a very emotional fight. I'm just like, ah,
Yeah,
damn,
man.
this
I'm
is
loving
insane.
every moment of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you had for Yozakura this
Honestly,
week?
I don't think I have anything else to say about this chapter.
All right, great. Yeah, good discussion, man. Great chapter. And that'll do it for Yozakura Family 125. All right, moving into My Hero Academia, chapter 350, Bound to a Fiery Fate. How do we feel?
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Right? This one's heavy,
Oh,
man. This one is heavy.
Dobby hurts. I wanted to touch on something. It's completely a tangent, but I noticed that a lot of the cops in this series are animals. Like the head
Anthropomorphic,
of the
yeah.
police was a dog. There was Sansa the cat man. Now there's a gorilla watching over Ijuko.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was like, it's really weird to see a reflection, right? Because so like if like we know that heteromorphs in the world are maligned. They are not treated well. They're it's basically quirk racism.
Right.
And I thought it was really interesting that in a world where quirks are everything, superheroes are the main law enforcement, and police officers are not the main law enforcement, is full of heteromorphs. And I was just like, that is very interesting. That like the second
Oh,
class of law enforcement is full of second class citizens in the eyes of the public.
yo.
So those who don't have great quirks or quirks that are more suited for law enforcement and less about combat or the heteromorphic quirks, they get relegated to police work. They even told this like in the beginning of the series, Midoriya was told by All Might, was like, "Hey man, kid, give up about your dream. Like just become a police officer, dude. Like you can still help,
Yeah.
still be meaningful, but
Yeah.
like
I'm trying to
you
think
don't
of
have to
like
work."
too many examples where a heteromorph is really in the spotlight like that. It's really just
Gang
gang
Orca is
orca,
like
right?
that feels about it. Like,
Oh, damn.
and he was like top 30, and he was near the lower end of that.
Yeah, because everybody like thinks he's a villain off of his like aesthetic or whatever.
They're like,
I
you
remember
look
that
like
being
a
a
villain.
thing.
I'm like, a little racist.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember something like that earlier in the series about them talking about how like, oh, is Gang Orca a hero or whatever. They were like, yeah, they definitely said something about that at one point. I never
Does he
really
look
thought about it like
monstrous?
that. I wonder if that's like really that consistent throughout the, because I know that we have really, a lot of examples of like you were saying, heteromorphs that are in the police force. But
Yeah.
now I'm thinking like, man, what about like the famous heroes? Like how many of them are not heteromorph? Like all of them except for Gang Orca.
Mirko. That's about it.
Mirko.
And hers is like very like
Yeah.
she has those ears. Those ears are real.
She's like
So,
the
like,
she's like the equivalent of like white
she's like the
passing.
white skin.
Yeah, she's like a white passing heteromorph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the super light skinned, 1/18th on my mom's side kind of heteromorph. And I'm just like, oh, that's so rough. And like, being biracial, it's like something that I'm like, I picked up on like kind of quick, and I was like, ironic. But it's also at the same time, like Japan's police force functions in a very different way, in more of a civil servant method as opposed to like what we're familiar with in the US.
Right.
So it's like I can see that. And I was like, coming from the lens that we're coming from. Interesting choice. Yeah,
having there being, a very clear abundance of heteromorphs in the police force and a very clear lack of them in the, main hero spotlight is like a really cool observation.
Yeah. But that's just kind of what I want to touch on before we get to the meat.
Yeah.
The grilled meat of the situation.
Dabber Todoroki. Okay, so yeah, dude, this was just so well written. Like this is Horikoshi's like one of his biggest bags, man, is the writing of these tragic characters and just characters in general in My Hero Academia have always been written pretty well to me, or very well. But like Dabi specifically, like it's like, man, whenever it's Shigaraki or Dabi that's getting the focus, like the storytelling just gets so deep and so you know what I mean? Like this whole situation where Dabi burned himself to death and then All For One and Ujiko like fixed him up, and he was supposed to be like, a throwaway vessel for, All For One basically if he needed a new body. But Dabi was like, fuck that. What y'all talking about? I need to get back to training with my dad. Fuck you. And then they were like, all right, well, whatever. He likes his dad too much, so we fixed him up. He'll die in a month anyway. Just let him go out there and fucking burn people to death until he dies. And then he comes back, like, to join the League of Villains.
Years later.
Yeah, and it's like, yo, how did you survive? And he's like, because I'm fucking pissed. And it's like, oh, shit.
I'm going to make it everyone's problem.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in, like, the Ayashimon segment about, like, the mind-body relationship and how, like, you can die of a broken heart and how being in a really good mental space can heal you physically and things like that. And it's like... Yeah, like straight up, like this dude is definitely supposed to be dead, but his like determination to enact his revenge on Endeavor is literally keeping his body moving. And it's like, okay.
What's that joke? Through spite and God, all things are possible.
Hey, man. My favorite one is the world be damned. Doom endures. Like whenever Dr. Doom gets dialogue about like perseverance and like mental fortitude despite oppressive physical resistance, it's just like, oh yeah, inject it.
Oh man, I love these chapters because it really confirms what I've been like. I've touched on the idea that like, hey, have you guys noticed that Dabi's like burn areas are spreading? And I'm like, yes, now like I remembered it when they first introduced him back with like the big white coat, when they're just like, here's the villain side, here's the hero side, and I'm like, hey guys, don't you think he looks a little crispier than normal?
Yeah. Wait a minute, where's that white coat?
He burned it off.
He did?
You can see on page 2 at the top right corner, you can see his sleeves and stuff.
Oh.
But the part under his eyes weren't completely connected and charred until now, so he's burning the coat off him.
So wait a minute, because I remember like that was before the Paranormal Liberation War that they showed like the new leaders of, you know, the League of Villains, and they had Dobby. He like ran his own little faction. Twice ran his own faction. Toga, Compressed,
Yes,
boom, boom,
and
boom.
all of them.
Yeah, and we got that like double spread that like showed them with their new drip and their like newfound roles.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I don't remember the white coat. Like, I thought I remembered the white coat then, right? That's, like, the first time we saw him in that. Is in that spread, wasn't it? And then...
I'm not recalling, like, super accurately visually.
Me neither. Me neither.
But you can see, like, parts of the coat on...
I was just saying, like, I don't remember the coat from after that panel. Like, I don't, like, legitimately do not remember him wearing a white coat, like, since then.
I just remember when, like, All For One, like, snapped his fingers. Everyone putty patrolled showed up.
Yeah.
He was dressed up like
so he had
all white coat, and I was like, oh, he's dressed in all white. He's, you know, literally dressed in all white. That's very symbolic of death. He's here to like suicide kamikaze this fight. Trying to kill Endeavor. And I mean, based off his dialogue in like 1617 and a couple other pages, like that's accurate.
Right. Yeah, I just completely forgot about the white coat, I guess, but yeah.
You can see remnants of it on.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, like, man, maybe I need to go back to like the last chapter or something and see, or a couple chapters ago, and just see when the fight started, because I, for the life of me, cannot remember this drip.
Watching his parts of his face begin to peel is horrifying, because like at the beginning of the chapter, he still had eyebrows. At the end of the chapter, his eyebrows have been scorched off. And, like, the skin has crawled up, like, he's lost his nose and everything.
Yeah, wow.
That's disgusting. I wonder how that's gonna get animated, to be honest. That's like...
Yeah, dude, and it's like, I used to have high hopes for, like, My Hero Academia adaptation. Like, I can't wait to see this and can't wait to see that, but it's like, man, considering the time slot for it and, like, the history of it censoring things, like, you know, throughout the series, like, they didn't really censor, like, too much for, like, Chisaki Overhaul, but then they go into My Villain Academia, and all of a sudden it gets weird, so it's like, I don't know how I feel about, like, when they eventually are going to adapt this
They're just like, we need to keep it for the kids, and I'm like, this story has lots of child abuse, to be honest. Like,
and a lot of horrific imagery. Like, why did you want to adapt this in this time slot if you knew that Buddy was going to be cooking like this? Maybe they didn't know. Who knows? I don't fucking know. But...
maybe they underestimated a thing, and they gave it the One Piece treatment. They're like, oh, this is a cute little story. Slavery, genocide, conflicts of kingdoms, revolution at all costs.
Yeah, social injustice. Hey, but see, like, I want to assume that, you know, Kohei would let him know. Like, there's got to be, like, huge conversations that are had from, like, the point of, like, we want to adapt your series until here's finished product. So you'd assume that these, like, board meetings or these whatevers would be, like, Kohei being like, hey, what do y'all think my series is? And they'll be like, well, from what we've seen, it's this. Like, all right, well, about to get a whole lot fucking darker, you know what I mean? So...
arms breaking constantly and, like, breaking bones and fingers and all this stuff. So, like... it's never been shy about, like, the traumatic amount of damage that happens.
I mean, I guess that's true, too, but I mean, like, breaking bones when using a power is, like, way different than, like, skin burning and, like, horrific, like, Junji Ito, like levels of, like, horror facial expressions and shit like that, bro. Like,
cremation.
Yeah, I gotta assume that, like, Kohei was like, hey, man, if you think that this is just, like, a cool little, you know... shonen superhero story, like, that's fine or whatever, but, like, it's gonna get dark in this bitch, like, eventually. So, like, how are y'all gonna deal with that? You sure you want to put me in, like, a daytime, like, kids just got out of school, like, kind of like time slot, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I wish that we had more insight into the industry in those kind of ways, because, like, there's so many, like, documentaries and interviews and whatnot that you get on, like, the Western side of things, where everything is, like, so transparent and, like, here's the entire process from start to finish, here's who we were talking to, here's, like, the chief creative, the editor-in-chief, the do we get all of those people, you know, in a much less opaque light than we do over in the East. And I just wish that we could just get a little bit more so that we could connect, some of these dots a little bit better. But whatever, here we are.
I
Anyway.
want to see where they're coming from.
Yeah, for real. I want to see the thought process. I want to see the decision making. I want to see like all of that stuff because it's just
I
like,
can only
man.
comprehend so much through the lens of the culture that I'm raised in.
Right.
And so like I know that there's always going to be like a cultural disconnect. So like you and I, we don't see much wrong with the Ayashimon. For them, they're like, this is glorifying the Yakuza. We don't want to do that.
Right.
So like it's just like, yeah.
Never
and
know.
Then our view of it is like everyone's a gangster. Like you think that the owners of like corporations aren't effectively gangsters? Like
police force in America seems kind of mobbish a lot of the times. Yeah.
Biggest gang in the States, man.
Right. But yeah, man, this shit's wild. The art's crazy. I really like this one on 16 where he's like fucking stepping through the statue of All Might, like directly down the triumphant arm.
He's
melting through it, like as he approaches Todoroki, and it's just like, man, the things that you're saying, like subtextually, are just like so crazy in this chapter.
Well, I love that moment for like 16, 17, and the fact that like Toya was made and eventually like made as a replacement. He failed as a replacement. Then he was salvaged as a replacement for AFO. Was discarded as that, considered a failure for some other reason, and then it's like Endeavor wanted to be All Might. Shoto is what Endeavor wanted and what Endeavor should have been.
Yeah.
Right. He is the true successor, and then Dabi is literally forcefully supplanting the image of All Might by melting through him, and like taking place of the thing that his father could never beat. Right. And so I love like symbolically Dabi is like, move over All Might. I'm the final test. I'm the one you truly need to beat, because he really just wanted to be seen.
Right. And the thing that ties it all together is, the fact that he wakes up after almost dying to be fixed by Ujiko and the rest of these guys as they're trying to coerce him into joining their family. And he's like, nah, dude, I got to get back to the crib. Like, what do you mean? I got training to do, my family. What the fuck? My dad's probably looking for me. Fuck y'all. And then he goes to the crib and sees him just, oh, Dabi's gone? All right, well, then we're going to do the same shit with Todoroki. Like, let's try with Todoroki then. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's like on some next shit, you know what I mean? So he's like, oh, okay, so that's how y'all moving. You know what I mean? All right, I'll be back. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that moment right there is like what ties like all this together. And I want to say that one of us, I think it was Kiko, long time ago, when we were talking about, when we first started talking about, along with everyone else, the possibility that Dabi is Toya, you know what I mean? I want to say Kiko had a moment where we were talking about like why Dabi hasn't like shown himself since childhood. And I think Kiko said, well, maybe he did. Maybe he came back after they thought he was dead and saw that Endeavor didn't give a fuck about him and was just back to training Todoroki. And like literally like this exact scene, like I want to say, I want to say one of us like literally brought up this scene like over a year ago, close to 2 years ago in reviews, like either Nick or Eagle or Kiko. It definitely wasn't me, I don't think, but I want to say that we totally predicted this scene in this way, not on some like haha we did it, but on some like like dude, this makes sense. Yeah.
I definitely believe that because like the fucked up part is like Dabi is emotionally unstable already. He's been traumatized by his like upbringing from Endeavor. Like the part that like All For One lost his grip on him is said we failed. He was like, oh, we tried our best to fix you, we failed, but that triggered him into reminding him of like all the failures of like his dad and him, and we failed. And he's like, no, I can't fail. I must go back. I must succeed. And then he goes back and he's like, oh, you already replaced me. I really was a failure. You didn't think about me. And he's young, he's traumatized, he's not thinking about it. Endeavor thought his son was dead. He
Yeah.
didn't even consider the fact that he's alive. Like, Dabi's not taking the time to think that maybe this guy that said, no, you can't leave, you have to stay here and like work with us, and we want to help you, so you should work with us.
Yeah.
May have left a fake body that his family buried, and like he just never thought that through. And that's his like villainous mistake, right? That's the stake that turns him into a villain.
Yeah, that's his hamartia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's like, that's the day that Toya died and Dabi was born. That's such a hard image, like praying before your own shrine. The own shrine in his own family home of like, hey, you're dead. And he's like, oh, well, I'm dead. But, you know.
But Dabi's here now.
Like a revenant, I still have unfinished business. And I will limp this fucking nerve-damaged corpse to its end.
Yeah, wow.
And that's crazy to me. I love that. That's so hardcore.
Right.
And it's strange because, like, he misunderstood so much.
Yeah.
You know? Like, if he had, like, taken a moment to think about it, maybe he could have salvaged something.
Right.
But at the same time, if he had gotten love or affection or acceptance or, like, the relief that he was still alive, he may not have had the force of will to keep living. And he would have unraveled and fallen apart in a month.
Yeah, man, that shit is deep, bro. I'm just
it's like
yeah.
You know, you're at a lose-lose situation. And, you know, if you can't win, at least get what you want kind of thing.
Right.
That's where he's at. That's his mentality. And I think it's interesting that he always espoused like different philosophies, and I feel like he never believed any words of that he said. He was like, I want to make Stain's philosophy reality, right? But Stain was like, heroes should be selfless, and those that aren't selfless should be cold. And I think that he latched onto those who are not selfless should be cold, attached it to Endeavor. I get to kill Endeavor. Stain's ideology is the one for me, even though I'm probably the most selfish member that proclaims Stain's ideology, like compared to Spinner. Spinner's like, hey man, Shiggy, are you okay? Are you all right? Whereas Dabi is like, hey, Dabi, don't rush. Jumps right in, ignores everyone, only focuses on what he wants.
And they're like, that's cool for like, you know, the chaos and destruction aspect of what we're doing here. But when it's time to like team up and like form a plan, it's like, we can't count on this motherfucker for shit.
He's the wild dog.
Yeah, and he's that good at playing that role that it still makes sense to have him on the team. You know what I mean? Which is something that is like very well kind of delivered, you know what I mean, in a story like My Hero Academia. Anything like related to Dabi and just like the Todoroki plotline in general has been handled like exceptionally well inside of My Hero Academia for me. And like I'm trying to like remember like more like instances of hamartia in, you know, shonen storytelling, because I want to say, you know, like that's something, you know, that you see a lot more of in, you know, bigger grandiose epic like fantasy tales, you know what I mean, like something like in like or in like seinen stories a lot more too, like where you have a tragic hero where he was doing everything right and then just made one fatal mistake, and then that like catalyzed the downfall of the hero, you know what I mean, like like all of that stuff. You see that in seinen a lot. You see that in like high fantasy, dark fantasy, you know, like D&D or like Magic the Gathering has a lot of examples of like, you know, that
tons of stuff in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? So it's like I'm trying to think of times where you really get that in like shonen storytelling, and I don't think it really makes a whole lot of sense in shonen storytelling a lot of the time. You usually have to like relegate it to, you know, an already villainous character like Dabi, and then you just like, you know, hindsight load in, you know, the hamartia in his backstory. But it still works because Dabi was supposed to be a hero. You know what I mean? Like he was being trained and built up, and if he had a fucking decent parent, you know what I mean, like he would have been a hero. You know what I mean? So, I mean,
AFO, it's like what I was saying about like Shigaraki. I genuinely believe that AFO waited for these kids to be fucked up by the dysfunctional dynamics in their families, maybe even like worked to create those dysfunctions within the family, like pressuring family by various means, finances, neighbors, just constant barrage of stuff, and then just waiting for the moment to scoop these kids and then further break them mentally and groom them to be his potential vessels and successors. Like that's kind of what he's doing, because like imagine the Todoroki family without having found the body for Toya, and then Toya coming back, and they'd be like, we missed you so much. Like his mom, his brothers, his sisters would be like, we missed you so much.
Yeah, the fact that he knows that they thought he was dead and moved on that quickly is everything in this situation. Because he was ready to go back and be back with his family. If he wanted to be back. If he would have never went back and still had just spent this much time away from them, he could be trying to, you know, reintroduce himself to them in a way different attitude. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, there'd have to be a whole bunch of different storytelling that was told in regard to his character to make that happen, obviously, and that's what we're talking about right now. But, like, the fact that he went back once and saw that is, like, really the moment that created Dabi.
Absolutely. And I don't think he ever came back because he felt like he wasn't strong enough to kill Endeavor. And that's why he never, ever went back. He's like, I don't need my family. The only reason I'm going to go back is to kill my dad. And he just spent all that time trying to get stronger. And he's like, this is the moment. This is the strongest I'll ever be. And soon I will be consumed. I will... And, like, he talks, like, that final spread where he's, like, telling his brother, it's like, hey... He dehumanizes his dad by calling him that thing over and over, and he's like, when I kill that thing, that'll be the mark I've left on this world. Like, killing Endeavor is his way of, like, living beyond his, like, half-life of a lifespan.
And it's also his way of communicating to himself, the world he occupies, etc., that, like, you can't get away with something like this. Like, you don't get to be a hero that's loved by everybody after doing something like this to me. The world needs to know that this is the kind of hero that they're admiring and that they're glorifying, and that there's something terribly wrong with that. And the way that they'll learn is by losing that thing in a very humiliating and truth exposing way. You know what I mean? Which is obviously a very chaotic and destructive route, which we all know makes sense for where Dabi is in his character arc currently. So it all just feels great.
Like, the idea of page 7, I should apologize to Mom and everyone. And Dad still needs to see what I can do. He needs to be seen. He wants to be seen. It's like those copycat school shooters that like they want to be famous. They want they want all the blame. They want the headlines and the fame, you know, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what Dabi's doing. I want to kill the guy that caused me the most suffering in my life by never acknowledging me.
If you won't see me, the whole world's gonna see me in this way, which is the exact opposite of the way you wanted the world to see me originally. So fuck you.
Yeah, it's the ultimate fuck you. Plus, like, if you won't look at me, I will force you to look at me as I kill you.
Yes.
Like, you're gonna look at me now, kind of thing.
Yes.
And it's just like, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
There's this moment that I spotted here after they failed to, like, convince him. Page 10. That building's on fire. So that means he burned down that daycare.
Oh, shit.
And there was a moment when he was trying to drag down Endeavor in the public view. When he's like...
I didn't even notice that.
When he's like, I'm Toya Todoroki, and I was abandoned by my father. I was left to die. He abused me. He abused all my siblings in an attempt to perfect a quirk. He did the shady-ass quirk marriage. And he's like, I've killed 30 innocent people. And I think that might be that daycare that he was in.
Hey, yo, wait a minute. Where did he say that again?
It was the video after Hawks, after the Paranormal
Oh,
Liberation Front. He creates this video. He's like, "Hey, Hawks killed a guy in cold blood. The government does shady shit. Superheroes do shady shit. My dad is the worst. He did quirk marriages. He beat children. He abandoned me. I'm his son, and I have killed 30 innocent people." And I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?"
right.
I was like, overall, like, how are you doing it? How do you judge it? What is your morality? Like, how do you judge innocence
Yeah.
when you want to murder and lash out at the world? And part of me is like,
Oh,
this is it.
yo.
He woke up in a place, they're like, hey, we're just a bunch of kids. And he's like, I burned down that building to escape and get back to my dad. I didn't care who I hurt on the way to get back to what I wanted. And that is the complete fall of Toya Todoroki.
Yo, that was amazing. Because not only did I not, for whatever reason, notice this like burning building and like connect that dot the way that you just did about how like he burnt that shit down like to escape or whatever. But also like that line of dialogue from the video earlier in the Paranormal Liberation Front War arc where he said I killed 30 innocent people. And like, yeah, the way that you broke that down makes a lot of fucking sense because it's like, who is innocent to Dabi when he is mad at the world? Because like, you want to assume that anybody that he's gone out of his way to kill since becoming Dabi and joining the League of Villains, he probably didn't see as like innocent or whatever. He probably had his own reason for killing them. But like these kids from when he was still a kid that he had to burn down this joint to escape from, he probably like regretted that for a little bit, like, damn, I'm sorry, kids, but I had to get the fuck up out of there. So he could probably see them as innocent, but easier than he sees any of the other innocent people that he's killed since rejoining the team. Yeah.
I think the other people that he's killed, you know, in his attempt to get stronger and perfect his flaming fist technique, he probably did the same thing and chose heroes that he viewed as selfish and like basically endeavor substitutes. He hunted down flawed heroes in the system and burned them down to the ground.
Wow.
And so he never viewed them as innocent, but those were the people that he killed to get stronger. So that's just my take on it.
No, that was fucking beautiful, fam.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved that. That was incredible.
It's tragic, man. This chapter hurt.
Yeah, I wonder if we're gonna stay on this area of the conflict for the next chapter, or if we're going to switch perspectives.
I think this is time for the Todoroki family brawl.
Yeah, but you know how manga could be. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, you really want the yeah, you want the continuation of this, don't you?"
Am I prepping?
Yeah.
Before I get to the meat of it.
Yeah, it's like, nah, we're gonna set this up on this drastic cliffhanger. Like, yeah, Todoroki versus Dabi next chapter, and then it's just gonna switch back to like Uraraka versus like Toga or something, which would be totally fine. But I could just see it happening that way.
I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be this because they need something to occupy the time that Deku is traveling to Tamura Shigaraki.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to do that. They're going to flip back to Himiko Toga versus the girls.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, I forgot Asui was there too. Yeah, yeah.
And then maybe All for One of the two, and then Deku arrives. Shigaraki, final fight, conclusion of the story, epilogue.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm feeling.
I like that.
But like there's only 3 other fights before the big fight, so like they're gonna have to do something, either that or they're gonna bounce to the AFO fight, then loop back to the other thing.
I could see them going to the All for One fight after this, because that's where Endeavor's at, right?
Prepping, right?
Yeah. Like, well, no, because that's where Endeavor's at, isn't he? He's like face to face with All for One.
Yeah, and then
so it makes sense to
fighting each other.
Yeah, it would make sense to switch to the All for One perspective coming out of this chapter, especially since especially him mocking. Oh, he'd probably love tearing Endeavor apart emotionally by saying, "Hey, you know, your son truly does hate you." Yeah,
and I do too. But I just think it's funny how you have so much power and capability, and yet you continually fuck up.
Yo.
You know, it's like I just think it's entertaining as a person that doesn't fuck up. You know, like, he would be like that guy. It's like, come on. It's like, don't you want to see how proud of? It's like, don't you want to be proud of your boys? Don't you want to see? And he just has like screens, just like, hey man, here you go, and then strike him while he's grieving.
Yeah, that was some Dr. Doom ass dialogue you just hit though. Like, as me, someone who doesn't fuck up, I was just like, oh shit, I heard Victor all over that.
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I feel like they're gonna like maybe do the prep to AFO and then bounce back to the brothers fighting after AFO is like, hey, we've set up the premise of our fight, and I've talked a lot of shit to kind of bring like brothers fighting Endeavor back to the boys and have that full circle moment. Then maybe the Himiko Toga stuff, then AFO fight. Deku arrives to save the day.
Yeah. Final
fight Shigaraki, and I feel like that would be satisfying. I just like those. Like, there's only so many combinations these things are gonna do.
Right, but, right. I think I like your idea of the progress, though. I think that would be a really cool way to get it. I'm ready.
Oh yeah, this is wild.
Oh yeah. You have anything else for My Hero this week?
I don't believe so. There was one moment where no. I think
you good?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, great conversation, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, dude.
Likewise.
Yeah, that was deep. That was deep. But I think that'll do it for My Hero 350. All right, getting into the last segment, Piece de Resistance, One Piece chapter 1046, Raizo. Cover story, that's what it's called. Germa 66, An Emotionless Excursion, Volume 9, 2 intruders in Pudding's home, Chocolat Town. I have no idea who these intruders could be. I feel like this is usually where Eagle gives his insight into things. Do you have an idea?
Brothers. The Smoke brothers.
Oh,
like you can see the little capes and stuff, and like they've been, because like 2 of them have been in the book. So where are the other ones?
Yeah,
and I think it's the other siblings that are like, where the fuck are our siblings?
So wait, 2 of them are in the book.
Yeah, 2 of them in the book.
So then one of them is a brother, and then the other one would have to be like Reiju?
Sister. Yeah, the sister or something.
Okay.
And so it's the other 2 siblings that are just like, where are the others? We need to go get them. So I think they're just going to invade, and they're like, we don't have the book. It's on its way to the thing. We can't trap them in the book. Fuck.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. Hell yeah. Because I remember I just remember getting to the chapter and being like, ah, shit. I have no idea who these people are or who they could be. I'm not paying attention enough as I should be. Usually that's where Eagle just comes in and goes, boom, boom, boom. This is what I think. But no, I think you got it. I think you got it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, getting into the chapter.
What are some of your favorite parts in this chapter?
I mean, I like the this fight with Luffy and Kaido is like so funny and cool, right? And it's like the way that it starts off where Luffy's like bouncing around like while Kaido's just like, oh, this kid, like on the ground, and Luffy's like, hey man, what do you think I should name that last attack, bro? And it's just like, damn, you're really like, that is so Luffy, but like that is like, if I was Kaido, I'd be like, no fucking way. He's asking me for help with naming his attacks while I'm like panting on my back, wondering how I got in this position. Like, god damn it, this fucking Straw Hat kid.
I mean, literal kids. It's just reminded me of times where I'm like watching parents just be like exhausted by their children. The children are just still running circles around them.
Right.
And I'm just like, yep, that's this fight.
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah. I also really liked on the 4 and 5 spread the first panel where Kaido's like, I'm relieved to hear you still got sass, Straw Hat. Awakening is what happens when your mind and body catch up to your powers. And those are certainly ridiculous powers. Like, I love this line of dialogue, one, because I feel like it's been like a theme throughout our conversation this week. Like, the mind and body relationship has like come up a lot in what we've been talking about in this episode. So that's really cool too. But also, yeah, as far as like explanations go in One Piece, I feel like for a power system as like vague and soft as, you know, devil fruits and hockey, you know, kind of are in One Piece, that coupled with Oda's knack for, you know, delivering exposition in very, you know, kind of sneaky, almost like Yoda, mysterious, like riddle kind of like poetic, like dialogue almost. Like, it's a very quick, short dialogue bubble. Awakening is what happens when your mind and body catch up to your powers. That's quick, to the point, good enough for like me in the moment, especially considering like, you know, the depth of explanation that we've gotten for power in One Piece so far has been, you know, rather shallow. So like a dialogue bubble like this does a lot for me in my understanding of like how, you know, powers and abilities work inside of One Piece. So I'm like grateful for it, and it also works great as a piece of dialogue coming from Kaido to show his experience as a pirate in the world. So I just think it served multiple purposes very well.
Oh yeah. I really liked the fact that like on 4 or 5 they trade blows, and like awakened Joy Boy Luffy literally just his ability permeates all that he surrounds. And it's like, I like how he has like the like the spikes sticking out of his body when he takes the impacts, and I
the
like
Kundali Dragon Swarm, and it hits him, and he's like, Habu, like, that's like how I like read that dialogue bubble. Like, how am I gonna do that? Yeah, like, but no, I like, yeah, no, and that works too. But I like, when I first read it, I was like imagining that like scene from Family Guy where they were like, hey, you remember that guy who's like really good at like verbal sound effects? And then he like falls down a flight of stairs and he's like, and I was just like, I like pictured that like for the voice actor in this scene. It just like sent me.
I just like the weird like punches going through Kaido, and he's just like, oh,
yeah,
this ain't good.
Yeah, that's good shit. I love that.
And then I thought the really important part in this series when Raizo does the elephant bath.
Oh yeah, before we get there though, while we're still on this like Kaido and no worries. I just before we move away, the panel on the bottom of page 6 where Kaido sends the demolition gust, and then he fucking pulls his legs up to dodge it. Very Looney Tunes, which is obvious, but also like it reminds me of like The Mask with Jim Carrey. It reminds me of like, which is all like derivative, you know what I mean? Or
it reminds me of that one scene from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Yeah.
Where the taxi just like they hit the old car jack and the wheels shoot the car up, and it just like goes over the bus or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, I love shit like that. Yeah, the fact that it's clearly trying to pay homage to, you know, Tex Avery, Hanna-Barbera, you know, Looney Tunes like era, you know, animation comedy. We've been seeing it all throughout, like Popeye the Sailor Man. Like, we've been naming all the references that everyone else has been naming, but this particular move was just like one that, like, you know, fits so well but just wasn't expected. Now that I know we're in this like you know, style of storytelling for this fight, like I was expecting, like, we saw the Popeye shit, I was like, yep, all right, great. We saw the Tom and Jerry, like, after images, like, all that stuff is sounding good. But like this one, I was like, oh, we got that too. Okay, we got them all. We got all the references now.
The panel directly above that, he's got the Roadrunner legs.
Yeah,
dashing Kaido, and I'm just like,
yeah,
that's pretty tough. Yeah. I haven't seen this many like comic book references since Yu-Gi-Oh had Toontown with Maximilian Pegasus.
Yeah, bro. Toon World. Toon World.
Toon World, yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah,
That
wow.
was such a weird part of Yu-Gi-Oh, but I was like, this is hilarious.
Yeah, but exactly. It was weird, but it was hilarious and it stuck. You know what I mean? Like it was like that is, you know, for most people, the thing that is immediately like memorable. Like
memorable.
Yeah, like people people will remember Toon World like before they remember a lot of shit in Yu-Gi-Oh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear people like, yeah, you remember that thing? Oh yeah, the weird Toon World thing.
Yeah,
they remember that before Exodia, you know, and
type
like,
shit. Maybe.
The series is ancient compared to like the rest of the other series.
Yeah.
I'm really dating myself. Like I got into that shit when I was like 10 or 11.
Yeah, it's about there for me too. Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, old times.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Back to Raizo though. What were you gonna say about Raizo?
I really liked the elephant bath and like Jimbei just doing the fishman jujitsu ocean current shoulder throw, and like
my favorite move he's got.
Seeing how he did that, like I love the transition from page 13 to 14 and like zooming out to see how he saves the entire base.
That was a great perspective. I feel like I'm not used to perspectives like this in One Piece for some reason.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, for like better part of a year, it's been very chaotic, and like a lot of people have been complaining about the paneling being this or that, and it's like chaotic. But I'm like, this is a literal war. I don't know. I feel like war should be chaotic, so I just kind of give it a general pass.
Yeah.
Like if you've been doing a series for so long, you're gonna have to like visually mix it up.
Right.
To do different things, and I feel like, you know, when he does arcs at such length for so long at a time, each arc, it's like I feel like they have like kind of specific things they want out of each arc visually.
Right.
And I feel like this one is like, it wasn't a popular choice, but that was the choice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like after watching like the Uro fight, Ishigori fight in like Jujutsu Kaisen, I was like, yes, another grab intangible thing and throw it. Yes. Yes, Maruo, punch fire!
Yeah, and it's just such a cool illustration, like effect, you know what I mean, to draw into the action, whether it's Uro from Jujutsu Kaisen or, you know, Jinbei here in One Piece. Like, that's just like such a cool thing to look at, you know what I mean? Like conceptually, and then also just like how it's represented in the actual illustration is just like so cool.
I love it. Because like it's a nice little like the whole chapter is bookended in like double bookends, right? So there's the bookends of the Kaido Luffy fight. And then the next bookends, there's everyone giving in despair to the flames, and then the other bookend of that is everyone is saved from the flames. And the middle part is just Raizo acknowledging Zunisha and Jinbei saving the day, and that's like the center slice of that sandwich. And I was like, you know what? Like pacing wise within a chapter, fantastic, very simple, but like effective.
Yes. And I love the dialogue too, where Raizo's like, "Hey man, Jinbei, bro, like I got you." You know what I mean? Like, thanks for believing in me. Holy shit. And he's like, "Dude, my fucking captain believed in you before me. Why the fuck would I have an issue?" And I was just like, damn. I was like, yo, that's like cool points for Jinbei, obviously, loyalty points for Jinbei, just like very cool crew moment on behalf of Jinbei, but also just like a really cool thing for Jinbei to say, like in a vacuum, just like a cool line of dialogue. Like, Luffy chose you, samurai, for our alliance. Why would I doubt you? Now come on, let's get this money. I was like, okay, Jinbei.
Dude, Jinbei's like top-notch soldier, right? Like he's the guy that you're like, oh, you follow orders. Damn, dude. And like he's very upfront about like, hey, I follow you. I'm gonna, you know, listen to you, even if I don't think your orders are always the right. Like, but like you're calling the shots. My job is to make that goal of reality.
Right.
And like he even like, you know, when he was like, I quit the Big Mom Pirates, he was like, hey, you know what? You've been cool. I've always followed your orders, but like I can't follow you anymore, and I have to tell you to your face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, respectable. Like Jinbei's always been like a big respect guy.
Hell yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's good shit.
There's parts in that. I love Hamlet's kind of reaction to Usopp, where he's like, I want to save Kid and Kiku, and it's also save myself. And Hamlet's like, hey man, you want to include my name too?
Yeah. It's like, bro, like, who even are you? Like, I completely forgot you were a character.
I know that I'm magically compelled to, like, be your buddy, but, like, I didn't get rid of my self-preservation.
Yeah.
Let's get the fuck out of
here. Yeah, please, save me too. Hell yeah.
I love little character moments. I'm looking at Sanji, and he just looks dilapidated.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because, like, he's always trying to, like, you know, get with the ladies, always, like, put his best face forward, and, like, the moment where he's surrounded by women and actually saving them, he looks like absolute dog shit. I love the irony of that.
Yeah, wow.
Like, page
9. Yeah, he's looking
real. And I'm like,
yeah.
You look like a salaryman on a 4-day bender, bro. Like, you haven't had a vacation day in, like, years.
Yeah, Oda really leaned into the Steve Buscemi Reservoir Dogs like aesthetic reference. The aesthetic reference for Sanji, like he totally leaned into that for this panel.
That's awful. I love that though. That's funny. I can't unsee it now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't know you didn't know that. That's totally like the aesthetic. That's legitimately the aesthetic reference for Sanji's design is Steve Buscemi in Reservoir Dogs.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you never seen that, bro, I'm about to send it to you right now. It's like a whole, just, like, image of all of the real-life references for character designs in One Piece.
Who's who? Yeah, like, who are the physical inspirations for this?
Yeah, I'm about to do this.
Please.
Yeah, awesome. One Piece character references.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting to, like, have kind of, like, those character moments, like, these are who they are, like, you know, like Beppo, right?
Yeah.
He can't handle heat. He immediately passes out. You know, Brooke and Nico, they're always looking for a next way out. They don't really give up. They're trying to keep going. Like Apu Apu is still, you know, a shit talker and more concerned about saving his own life than actually like understanding the pain of others.
Yes.
And then, you know, Usopp being a coward, like, I'm gonna do a thing. Oh, that backfired immediately. Like, my sprinkler plant immediately, like, took flame and is fucked. Oh, we're fucked. You know, that kind of thing. And then, even Frankie, he's just like, I don't even know what to do. I'm just gonna run around and keep doing my best.
Yeah,
you know,
and still talking shit, too. He's like, man, I gotta get Zoro out of here. Like, this shit is fucking crazy right now. I gotta get this guy to Chopper. And they're like, we're all gonna burn before that happens. He's like, I'll show you a burn if you keep talking shit. And I'm just like, yeah, Frankie.
He's just crotchety, and he's just like, I'm gonna keep plugging away. I am a man of action and very few thoughts.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Peepar, like, DM call real quick. I just want you to, like, pull up this, this picture of, like, the side-by-side references. Just because, like, I just think that that's fun that you haven't seen this yet. So,
oh my god,
it'd be a cool little like combo to have real quick as you like go through the references. Like some of them I don't know, you know who they are.
The
obviously.
Blind Marine I knew.
Yeah, that's definitely Zatoichi.
He was a like because I love Zatoichi. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Yes, Lenny Kravitz as like Mr. Five or whatever. The like he like picks his nose and flicks boogers at you and then they blow up or whatever. That dude from like fucking Little Garden, I think was the arc that he was in. Yeah, Lenny Kravitz, that's crazy. Fucking Mankind reference for Spandam. Mick Foley in like the very middle.
Yeah,
dude.
Crazy. The Al Capone reference is kind of cool.
Hell yeah.
I like the Don Quixote. Like, I recognize the Don Quixote. I think it's funny that, like, apparently Killer is just a Daft Punk reference, and I'm like, holy shit.
Dude, oh man. Whitebeard as Hulk Hogan is so good.
Okay, it's really funny, because it's just literally, like, turn that frown
upside down.
That's the theme of the series, folks. That's the theme of the series.
Freddie Mercury is fucking what's that man's name from the Galila company in Water 7? God, I can't remember the dude's name in One Piece, but yeah, Freddie Mercury is that guy. That's a banger. That one was one where I was like, God fucking damn it, really? And the craziest one to me is that, like, okay, so Jim Carrey is the reference for Bon Clay, right? Mm-hmm. But then he's also like the reference for Frankie's original design.
Oh, and, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's shapeshifter.
But like the crazy part is that Frankie and Bon Clay have the same voice actor in the anime.
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah, so it's like,
is that meta? That's so meta.
Yeah, like that's like too deep. Too deep.
Oh man.
Tim Curry is fucking Ivankov. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. I was like, I could see that the entire time. I was like, kind of looks like Dr. Frankenfurter. Why is this Dr. Frankenfurter?
Yeah, I wasn't ready for Stevie Ray Vaughan being Ace though. Like that, like when I seen that for the first time, that shit shook me to my fucking core because I love Stevie Ray Vaughan, and it should have been just so much more obvious to me, but it wasn't.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I like it though.
Hell yeah.
So there's actually more references that I want to like dive into. Like, so you have like the celebrity references.
Yeah.
I want to like dive into like the mythological references.
Yeah. Going back to the chapter. Yeah.
Pardon me.
Absolutely. That was fun though. Thank you for that.
Of course. I love seeing that stuff. Like, because like you and I both talk about how media influences media in all forms. Like art isn't stolen; it's recycled. It's
right.
It is what it is.
It's a thin line, though. Like, there's definitely, like, plagiarism is definitely a thing.
Oh, but, plagiarism is definitely a thing. In a way that is lazy. Recycling in a way that's cheapened.
Yes.
But so, I've said it a couple times where, like, Luffy and Kaido are Fujin and Raijin. But it's inversed, right? So Fujin was supposed to be a protector spirit. You know, the kamikaze divine wind. Yeah, the wind. Wave the fans, sink the navy that's coming to invade from Mongolia.
Yeah.
Kaido is the evil Fujin, whereas Raijin is a demonic son of Izanami.
Oh man, the undead schoolgirl chick. Oh shit! Like she's like an undead, maybe not schoolgirl, but like the undead. God, this is just like me playing Smite coming into play right now. So
Izanami and Izanagi, he's Raijin's their son, and so he's also considered demonic, right? So Raijin, because like in Japan they have a saying, it's like, you know, they tell kids to hide their belly buttons during storms because Raijin will eat it. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. He's that fierce storm god, always, you know, grimacing to show his like displeasure, which is the literal opposite of Luffy as Joy Boy, even though they have similar aesthetics. And it's the reverse. He is a joyful, happy, vibrant, storm-like quality.
Yeah.
And Raijin had a brother, the god of fire, called Kagetsuchi, and Luffy had a brother who was on fire in Portgas de Ace.
Wait a minute. Uh-oh. Okay, Oda. Okay, Mello. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool, though, because if Fujin was normally a, you know, benevolent, you know, Shinto deity, and Kaido is the representation of that on the evil inverse, and then Raijin historically was evil Shinto deity channeled through Luffy as benevolent lightning wielder, is just a tight flip parallel reference. Love that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that's really great in this sort of Super Japan style story. And I'm like, he's been having this planned for a minute. Like, I feel like what he did was he went backwards at the end, filled up the story. He wanted to get all the beats he wanted to have, and then just wrote the story from the beginning, from the character's perspective, hitting all the beats that he wanted to. And that's why it's taken such a long time.
Yeah, I love that.
Because he's like, I want to explore everything I want to explore in this arc. to hit all the beats that I want.
Yeah, that's real good. Plus, it totally makes sense that Luffy can grab lightning.
Yeah, and the fact that he grabbed lightning in the last page was the part that I was like, huh,
yeah,
that makes sense. Plus the whole, like, Kaido controls clouds and they're able to lift things, and he had that move, that bowling ball blast of, like, the gust of destruction, demolition gust.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, he's got demolition gust. Luffy literally grabs lightning with his haki-coated fist.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, move over, Enel. Like,
bro, dude even looks like Raijin right now, like in this panel.
He does, and I was like, this is fantastic. I love that.
A lot of the Western audience is gonna be like, Luffy's Zeus now, and it's like, nah, it's Raijin. Because like Zeus, like he's known for grabbing lightning and throwing it at you. You know what I mean? So I'm sure a lot of
Fujin was the base for the Greek god of the winds, Boreas. They share a ton of similarities in the fact that they both have a giant bag full of the many winds they've captured in their travel.
Oh, nice fart bag.
Yeah, big old whoopee cushion. 7 wins.
Holy shit.
Greeks, Japanese, very mature.
But nah, dude, I love that that mythology, observation, analysis, point out spot. Like I like that's just so cool, man.
Yeah, I really dug it. I was like, I need to like really break that. And then when I was looking it up, I found about Fukutsuchi, and I was like, oh shit, it's Ace, oh my god.
Yeah, dude, that's the one that's like, oh fuck.
That was the clincher for me. That was like, oh my god, I'm onto something. Yes.
Yeah, you killed it with that one for sure. Yeah, good shit, man.
But that's my whole bag. There's nothing but crumbs left.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, a lot of this was, like, I feel like we, digged pretty deep inside of the things that could be dug deep into. Everything else is just, like, straightforward comedy or just, like, character moments to remind the audience, like, where certain people are. You know what I mean, on the battlefield and what they're doing, in the current moment. So there's not a whole lot to deep dive in every scene, but yeah, the mythology stuff and the awakening dialogue with Kaido and the cover story, and yeah, I feel like we gave it a good go.
Yeah, we done did dig Dug-a-Dome.
Doug Dimmadome?
Doll off the dome. I don't know. That's all I got.
Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale. All right. Well,
thank you for listening.
Yeah, I think that's all. I got for One Piece, man. You're good, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, that'll do it for this chapter of One Piece and this episode of the Project Manga Podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did, make sure you slap a like on the video if you haven't already. Consider subscribing if you're enjoying the content so far and you are not subscribed yet. Check out our description section where you can follow us on Twitter and join our Discord, or listen to the podcast on like Spotify or Apple Music or something. There's a lot of links down there. You should click them all. Check out our Patreon or our online store if you want to directly support what we do beyond just watching the videos, which is plenty of support as well. But that'll do it. Wrapping up, I'm your host, Nox.
And I'm Mellow Yenis.
Catch y'all next time.